The first thing I did in my new life was refuse to perform surgery on my sleeping cousin. 4 seconds. That's the total career experience I had in this world when I made that call. 4 seconds since I woke up inside a body that wasn't mine, in a world that wasn't mine, holding a jade knife that definitely wasn't mine. My name was suddenly Lin Yuan, 16 years old. First young master of the Changge family, one of those ancient clans that measures its front yard in miles and its grudges in millennia. And standing in my head, along with 2 lifetimes of memories, was one very clear instruction from the universe. Walk into that room, take the knife, and cut the supreme bone out of your cousin manhwa while she sleeps. Because that's what I was. I checked the memories twice. This world was a novel, and I was not the protagonist of it. I was the villain. The handsome, elegant, rotten-to-the-core young master who steals his little cousin's heaven-given talent in Chapter 1 and spends 800 chapters being slowly hunted down by every hero in existence until one of them finally turns him into a cautionary tale. That was the script. The knife was literally in my hand. The clan elders were literally waiting outside the door, nodding encouragingly, like proud parents at a school recital where the performance is organ theft. I looked at the knife. I looked at the sleeping girl. She was maybe 15, curled up like a shrimp, drooling slightly on a silk pillow worth more than a city. Yeah, no. I put the knife down, and a bell rang inside my skull. Ding. Invincible Return System activated. Oh good, I thought. A system. Every transmigrator gets one. It's basically airport luggage at this point. Mine, however, did not offer me a sword, a cheat manual, or a grandpa in a ring. Mine offered me a business model. Here's the pitch, as delivered by a voice with all the warmth of a tax notice. Bind a person to the system. Give them gifts. Receive returns. The returns are multiplied. Sometimes 10 times. Sometimes 100. Sometimes, if the wheel feels spicy, 10,000. And as a new user bonus, the system's words, not mine, my system has onboarding. My very first return was guaranteed at 1 billion times. 1 billion. With a B. That's not a cheat. That's a printing error in my favor. There was fine print, because there's always fine print. I could only bind people the system approved of, and the system had standards I didn't understand yet, and gifts only counted if they were given sincerely, no takebacks, no strings. In other words, the universe had built an entire cosmic engine that ran on one fuel, me being genuinely nice to people, the villain of the novel, powered by generosity. Somewhere, the original author was rotating in his grave fast enough to generate electricity. The first approved binding target was, of course, the girl I just declined to disassemble. Lin Manhwa, my cousin. Born with the supreme bone, a chunk of destiny lodged in her chest that guaranteed she'd grow up to shake the heavens, which was exactly why the old script wanted me to pry it out and install it in myself like a stolen car stereo. Instead, I went to my room, dug through the previous owner's shamefully large treasure cabinet, picked out the best pill in there, came back and left it by her pillow with a note. For Manhwa, eat before breakfast. Ding. Gift registered. First return, 1 billion times multiplier. Congratulations, host. You have received 1 immortal bone. I'd love to tell you, I reacted with dignity. An immortal bone. Not a metaphor, an actual bone from an actual immortal, the kind of thing this entire world isn't even supposed to contain because the laws of this universe ban immortal power the way small towns ban fireworks. The system installed it directly into my chest, where it fused with my sternum and began radiating a warmth that said, very quietly, everything in this world is now flammable and you are the match. And here's the beautiful part. This body already had double pupils, twin irises stacked in each eye, one of the rarest fighting physiques in existence, the kind of eyes that come along once an era and punch holes in mountains. The original plot had me so busy coveting my cousin's bone that I never developed my own gift. That was the joke of the whole novel, and nobody in it ever got to laugh. Double pupils are already an invincible path. Why in all the heavens would I borrow my sister's bones? So the plan wrote itself. The script says villain, the system says philanthropist, and I say, I'm going to be the most terrifyingly generous man this world has ever seen, and I'm going to gift my way to godhood. Grandpa found me that afternoon. Wenju, clan ancestor, a saint so old his eyebrows have seniority over most kingdoms. He'd heard I spent the morning not harvesting my cousin, which apparently exceeded everyone's expectations of my character by such a margin that he decided to formally name me Divine Son of the Clan on the spot. That's the actual bar my predecessor set. Don't rob a relative of her bones before lunch. Promotion. I accepted with a straight face. Inside, the immortal bone hummed against my ribs like a struck bell. Chapter 1 of the old script was officially dead. Time to write mine. The next month turned into the strangest shopping spree in cultivation history. See, the system didn't just pay out once. Every gift to a bound target rolled the wheel again. So I gave. I gave like a man possessed. I gave like an uncle at a wedding with something to prove. I gave manhwa a rainbow silk umbrella, the kind girls carry at festivals. The system gave me back a starfall bow that shoots arrows which technically qualify as meteors. She gave me a jade pendant in return, her own gift, shy, both hands, eyes on her shoes, and because the system counts returns flowing both ways once you're bound, that little pendant came back to me as congenital grand void astral chi, a defensive aura so absolute it treats incoming attacks the way a closed museum treats tourists. I gave her a box of ordinary cultivation pills. The wheel spun, glowed, landed on a crit. Great Tao pills, each one worth a small war, plus a cultivation technique with the extremely humble name Immortal King, descends to the 9 heavens. I opened the manual, read the first page, and closed it again, because the first page said this technique will manifest the Dharma form of an immortal king, and I needed a moment to sit down. Then I gave her a body-strengthening manual called Dragon Elephant Strength, solid clan standard, respectable, boring. The return came back stamped immortal rank, Dragon Elephant suppressing prison strength. It converts the body, particle by particle, hundreds of millions of particles, each one reforged into the strength of dragons and elephants stacked on top of each other. I practiced it for a week and had to relearn how to close doors because the doors kept coming with me. And manhwa, every gift I handed her made her stronger too. That was the poetry of the thing. The pill matured her supreme bone. The umbrella turned out to conceal a defensive treasure. The manuals took her up 2 realms in a month. My cousin was speedrunning her own legend, glowing brighter by the week, and looking at me with an expression I couldn't read yet. Something between gratitude and someone doing very hard math. I found out what the math was much, much later. File that away. It's worth it. For now, the clan just saw 2 prodigies leveling up in tandem and decided it was time to show us off. Coming of age trial. Public. Formal. Every branch of the family watching from carved stone stands, plus a few rival young masters who'd been telling anyone with ears that the new divine son was a fraud who got promoted for not committing a crime. Which, to be fair, accurate. The trial was simple. Enter the beast enclosure. Subdue what comes out. What came out for me was a Fate Wheel Realm Ironback beast, a creature 2 full realms above anything a 16-year-old should legally face, followed by a spirit communication realm Horned Drake, in case the first one felt lonely. The stands went quiet. My cousin Liu Tian, the loudest of the fraud theory scholars, leaned forward with the smile of a man about to enjoy a funeral. The Ironback charged. I hit it once. I want to describe an epic battle here. There's no epic battle. There's a sound like a temple bell being dropped off a cliff. And then there's an ironback beast embedded in the far wall, legs still running in the air, deeply confused about the recent events of its life. The Drake looked at its colleague, looked at me, and made a genuine, visible attempt to remember an urgent appointment elsewhere. I caught it in 2 steps and put it next to its friend. Matching set. It wasn't a trial, it was a product demo. Liu Tian's funeral smile died on his face and was survived by his open mouth. Grandpa Wenju laughed so hard the stone stands cracked. And somewhere in the crowd, a girl with a supreme bone in her chest watched me with those unreadable eyes and quietly revised her math again. That evening, the system pinged me with a second approved binding target, Su Lin, my cousin from my mother's side of the family, the G clan, and by an engagement our 2 families inked before either of us could object, technically my fiancé. Freshly of age, energy of a small festive typhoon, in possession of something called a yin-yang divine body, which is to balance and creation what a volcano is to camping. She arrived at our estate for an extended stay, marched up to me on day 1, looked me dead in the eye, and said she'd heard I was supposed to be a scoundrel and was prepared to be extremely disappointed in me at a moment's notice. I gave her a hair ornament. She stared at it, stared at me, put it on, declared that I was provisionally acceptable, and informed me she'd be supervising my behavior indefinitely. The system gave me back a spiritual treasure. I gave that away too. It gave me something better. I'm not going to pretend I understood the full shape of what my life was becoming, standing there in the courtyard while my new fiancé supervised me and my chest hummed with an immortal's bone. But I understood this much. In the original novel, everyone in this family died badly, and the man wearing my face was the reason, not this time. This time the villain's script goes in the fire, and everyone I bind, everyone I feed treasures to like ducks at a park pond, rises with me. I've made my peace with what I am. I'm not the hero of this story, and I'm not its villain either. I'm the man who read the ending, hated it, and spent everything he had rewriting it into something worth living in. I gave away treasures. I got back miracles. I bound 5 women to a system and got bound to them by something the system can't measure. If that makes me the luckiest man on the road, fine. I intend to be the kindest one too. Right up until the moment someone I love needs me to be the cruelest, and then I'll be that, and I'll sleep afterward because I've done the math and the math loves me. The heavens gave me a billion-fold return on kindness. It would be rude not to abuse it. Now, a normal cultivation story spends its first 100 chapters on the hero grinding herbs and getting humiliated at sect exams. My story skipped that part because my story had a budget. What it had instead was a problem the original novel called Sons of Luck. Here's the concept. In a world that used to be a book, the narrative doesn't just die because the villain quit. The heavens keep sponsoring protagonists. Boys with tragic backstories, secret grandpas, glowing destiny, and a supernatural talent for stumbling into treasure that should have been mine. The novel called them Children of Destiny. I called them my competitors because every scrap of fortune they hoovered up was fortune that didn't flow to my family. And the system, bless its mercantile heart, gave me the perfect radar for them. Once a woman was bound to me, I could read her fortune, not vague tea leaf stuff, actual printed fate, who she'd meet, what she'd gain. Which charming stranger with a tragic backstory was scheduled to rescue her from a danger he himself had quietly arranged. The first time I checked Manhwa's fortune, the text told me that in 2 months, at a rundown village by the border, a young man named Joe Kai would save her from a beast tide, win her gratitude, and begin, I quote the vibe, not the wording, the slow theft of my entire family's destiny. Joe Kai, the original novel's main character. A boy on his 3rd consecutive life, courtesy of a treasure called the Rebirth Stone that yeeted him back to the start every time he died, memories intact. A man playing the world like a game he'd already beaten twice. So we went to the village early. Funny thing about destiny, it makes appointments, but it doesn't check who arrives first. The village sat on a dying spirit vein, and the locals worshipped a cracked old bottle in their shrine, the Gathering Spirit Bottle, a relic that condensed thin spiritual mist into drinkable dew. I bought it from the village for enough money to relocate the entire village somewhere with better weather, and everybody left happy. Then I gave the bottle to Manhwa, because that's my whole thing now. The wheel spun. Crit. The system handed me back the condensing divine bottle. Same concept, minor upgrade. 1 drop of its dew equals a year of cultivation, and it makes a drop a day. I stood there holding a device that mass produces time, and the beast tide that was supposed to introduce Joe Kai to my cousin got personally dismantled by a bored 16-year-old with meteor arrows before it reached the front gate. Joe Kai still showed up, of course. 2 days late, panting, ready to heroically save everyone, and visibly devastated to find the village intact, the beast gone, and the girl of his next 800 chapters handing out relief supplies with her scary cousin. I got my first good look at him, handsome in that rumpled trust me way, eyes of a man reading from a script only he could see. He tried 3 separate conversation openers on Manhwa, and she gave him the exact look you give a street vendor selling healing crystals. I could have killed him right there. I didn't, and not out of mercy. His rebirth stone would just respawn him somewhere out of sight with all his memories and a burning grudge. No, when you fight a man with extra lives, you don't take his life first. You take his wallet. The chance came a week later in the city, at a gambling stone house. You buy rough stones, cut them open, hope there's treasure inside. Pure luck, which is to say, a rigged game where the house always wins unless one of the players is a child of destiny with plot armor, or a villain with future sight in his eyes. Joe Kai swaggered in with borrowed money and his 3rd lifetime memories, heading straight for the 1 stone he remembered contained a jackpot. I bought it before he crossed the room. Then I bought the next one he looked at, then the next. I didn't even need my eyes for the first 3. His face was a catalog. By the end of the afternoon, I'd cracked open 5 stones worth of glowing treasure in front of a cheering crowd, and Joe Kai had spent every coin he had on a rock containing another, sadder rock. He staggered out, mumbling that this wasn't how it went last time. Behind him, the crowd was already retelling the story with sound effects. The best part? Inside one of those stones was a yin-yang jade that, gifted onward, returned as a 5 elements Tao fruit. The kind of treasure that upgrades a person's fundamental roots. Into the pile it went. The pile was becoming a mountain. The mountain was becoming a logistics problem. There are worse problems. Then came the family tour, because my mother, Hua Lian, decided her newly impressive son should meet her side of the family before rumors did. The Ji clan turned out to contain 2 important people. The first was my cousin Wei Ming, older brother of my fiancée Ruyu, 5th-ranked prodigy in the whole domain, owner of a divine king body and a jawline you could sharpen swords on. He greeted me warmly, welcomed me to the family, and then challenged me to a friendly spar within the hour, because in cultivation, families that is the warm greeting. Hao Yue was genuinely strong. Divine King steps, footwork like a rumor, fists like landslides. Against last year's Lin Yuan, he'd have won while holding tea. Against me, he lasted long enough to be impressive and short enough to be educational. When he finally sat down in the crater, he laughed, wiped his mouth, and said the words that made me actually like him. Again, next year. No resentment, no scheming, just a man adding me to his to-do list. In a world full of snakes, my new big cousin was a golden retriever with abs. The second important person was great-uncle Shen Mo, who'd spent a decade bedridden while something dark chewed on his soul from the inside, a curse no healer in the region could even see, let alone remove. They'd stopped inviting healers. They'd started planning around him the way you plan around weather. I put one hand on his chest and let the immortal bone do what immortal things do to unclean things. I won't dress it up. There was a shriek only souls could hear, a smell like a lightning strike in a temple, and then a 10 years bedridden old man sat up, demanded meat, and challenged everyone present to drinking. My mother cried. Ryu cried. Hao Yue tried to challenge the recovered patient to a friendly spar and was dragged away by his ears. Word of that little house call traveled, which is how the Tianlan sect entered the picture, in the form of their holy maiden, Li Yue, white hair like first snow, manners like a court scroll, and a sect behind her that urgently needed a favor from someone with immortal-grade hands. I helped. Details later. The short version is that their problem also shrieked when it left. Afterward, Li Wei came to me, knelt in the formal style, and asked to follow me, not as a saintess, as my maid. I said that was insane. She was a holy maiden of a whole sect. She said the sect had voted, and the sect agreed with her, and the sect had already packed her bags. There are arguments you can win, and there are white-haired girls who have already decided the shape of their lives while you were still clearing your throat. I gave her a sword to welcome her. The system gave me back a better one. Of course it did. And then, before the G Estate visit ended, the world reminded me that it wasn't all shopping and family dinners. A crack opened in the sky 2 provinces over, a chaos rift, one of those wounds in reality that bleed treasure and monsters in equal measure, and every clan with a pulse sent its young geniuses to go pick at it. We went too. Inside that broken landscape, I saw 2 things I still think about. A river with no source, flowing out of nowhere into nowhere, with something vast and serpentine turning over in its depths. Asleep for now, and thank you for that. And a shattered stone stele with a broken sword tip buried in it, humming with an oath old enough that the words had eroded and only the anger remained. I touched neither. 16 years of life experience, 2 lifetimes of common sense. What I did take was the Rift's core prize, a fate wheel enhancement, and when I ran it through the gift engine, what came back rewired me. My spirit sea, the inner ocean every cultivator builds to hold their power, turned gold. An actual wheel of heavenly law rose out of those waters and started turning, slow and huge, like the mechanism of something planetary. The manual called it the Heavenly Tao Fate Wheel. The practical translation: my power stopped filling a pond and started filling a sea, and the sea had an engine. I stood on my balcony that night, listening to a golden ocean turn inside my chest, doing inventory, an immortal's bone, an Immortal Kings technique, eyes that see the future in flashes. A cousin whose destiny I'd rerouted, a fiancé auditing my character, a snow-haired maid who out-stubborned her own sect, a golden retriever cousin, and a protagonist out there somewhere, broke, confused, and rescheduling his hero's journey around my existence. Somewhere past the clouds, the plot of the old novel was circling like a patient vulture, wondering where its villain went. Let it circle. I was just getting started, and honestly, the vulture should worry about me. The vulture, as it turned out, had teeth. 3 sets of them, and they all showed up in the same season. First came the Yazi clan, alien race, old blood, the kind of neighbors who send condolence letters before the funeral. Their young patriarch Yazi Xuan decided a rising human divine son was a problem best solved early and ambushed our party on a mountain road with a full war band. He gave a speech about it first. They always give a speech. I let him finish, because interrupting is rude and because I wanted his warriors to fully commit to the encirclement before I demonstrated what Immortal King descends to the 9 heavens does to an encirclement. Short version. The sky opened. A golden phantom the size of a hill mirrored my punch, and the war band stopped being a formation and started being weather. Yazi Xuan himself knelt in the wreckage and begged, very fluently, for mercy. I told him to stand up and go home. He stood up, thanked me through tears, and threw a poisoned bone spike at my back from 6 feet away. I know. I was disappointed too. Not surprised. Disappointed. The spike shattered on my astral qui like a breadstick on a bank vault, and I turned around and finished the conversation. Result and reaction, that's all you need. The Yazi clan needed a new patriarch, and every alien race in the region quietly updated their file on me from arrogant child to do not engage. His quasi-saint uncle came for revenge a week later and had the misfortune of finding my grandfather at home. Grandpa Wenju is old, but saints age like bells, dusty on top, still 1 clean note from shattering a room. The uncle left in a stretcher format. Second came the engagement, the real one. Ryu and I had been fiancés on paper since before either of us had opinions. That season, the families made it official, and the two of us performed the bonding rite in the clan's yin-yang grotto, hands joined over an ancient array, souls open to each other all the way down, no secrets surviving the light. It's the most vulnerable thing two cultivators can do, and it's not something you fake. She saw everything I am. I saw a heart like a struck flint, small, bright, absolutely unafraid. The rite left a mark on both our souls, a thread between us that distance doesn't cut. And the moment our joined power circled through the array, my golden sea turned over, and I saw something no one in this world had seen in an age. 6 great wheels turning in darkness, the 6 paths of reincarnation themselves, wheeling past my inner eye like the gears of the universe checking in on a new hire. I didn't tell the elders. Some visions you report, some visions report you. And third came Jokai's finale. He'd been busy, our broke protagonist. Fortune reading told me he'd latched onto a new patron, scraped together new resources, and was building toward the move all his lifetimes were really about, getting close enough to my family to start collecting what he considered his. The script wanted its hero back on track. The script sent him at us during a joint expedition, with backup, with a plan, with that trust me smile. What the script forgot is that I'd read the appendix, the Void Mirror, my family's imperial weapon, an artifact forged by an actual emperor, does one thing better than anything alive. It seals space. No exits, no teleports, no respawn point handshakes. I'd borrowed it from the clan vault for exactly this occasion, the way you borrow an umbrella when the forecast says protagonist. When Jokai made his move, the mirror came down over that valley like a jar over a wasp. He realized what it meant faster than his backup did. Credit where due. A man on his third life knows the sound of a door locking. He threw everything, hidden cards, borrowed treasures, a last-second attempt at a heartfelt speech about how we didn't have to do this. We didn't. I did. One punch, no montage. The golden phantom rose behind me. The valley rang like the inside of a bell, and the story's chosen one went down with his script still open to a page the world would never reach now. The rebirth stone tried to activate, found space sealed in every direction, and just sat there in his palm blinking like a phone with no signal. I picked it up out of the crater. Warm. Heavy. 3 lifetimes of unfair advantages in one smooth stone, and it worked for me now. A pocket universe of storage, a void step escape, a soul armor, and a 4th function, locked, that hummed at a frequency I felt in the immortal bone. Something about gates, something about later. I stood there for one honest moment, holding another man's second chances, and I let myself feel the strangeness of it. I'd been him, in a sense. I woke up in a borrowed body, too, handed a script and a second life I didn't ask for. The difference was that I got a system that paid me to be kind, and he got a stone that paid him to try again until he won. I don't think I was better than him. I think I got a better cheat, and I made a better first decision with it, and everything after that was compounding interest. If our starting gifts had been swapped, I'd be the one respawning in the dark right now, grinding a grudge, and he'd be the one holding my women's fates in his palm and calling it kindness. I put the thought down before it got comfortable. I don't like conclusions that make me the lucky one instead of the good one. But I keep reaching them, and I've learned to keep them where I can see them. Then the system chimed. The 1,000 illusions treasure he'd been carrying, gifted onward that evening, returned to me as a vermilion bird undying medicine, an actual immortality herb with feathers of fire, and the moment passed, because it's hard to brood with a phoenix-shaped miracle glowing in your storage ring. The world noticed all of it. Of course it noticed. That autumn, the heavens themselves hung a scoreboard. The True Dragon rankings, a golden list written across the sky by heaven's own hand, ranking every young prodigy in the central heaven Dao domain by destiny, talent, and momentum. Clans planned marriages off this list. Wars had been started over its footnotes. Number 1, Lin Yuan, 16. First on the list before most of the domain had learned to spell my name. Number 3, Lin Mei Hua, my cousin, riding a supreme bone and a year of my gift catalog. Number 5, Hao Yue, grinning somewhere and adding me to next year's to-do list again. Ruyu made the board too, and celebrated by supervising me twice as hard. And number 2 was a name I didn't know yet, Han Qingyi, Holy Maiden of the Yaoqi Holy Land. I found out what the name meant when the system pinged approval for a 3rd binding, and the fortune text that came with her read less like a fortune and more like a legend with the ending torn off. We met at a gathering of holy lands. She was the kind of beautiful that makes crowds stop pretending they weren't staring. Cold face, snow robes, eyes like a winter sky deciding whether to snow on you specifically. And she was more than that. My eyes see through things, and what I saw in her was a soul far, far older than her body, folded down tight like a blade in a sheath. A woman reincarnated from somewhere high enough that this whole world was her downhill. She looked at me exactly once, the way you look at a stranger who reminds you of someone. I didn't know then who I reminded her of. File that one away too. It's the biggest file. I gave her a gift before the gathering ended. Refined immortal gold, casually, the way you'd offer a colleague a pastry. She stared at it, stared at me, and accepted it with both hands and an expression of severe recalculation. The system paid out. The system, at this point, was basically applauding. 3 bindings. A dead protagonist stone in my pocket, a phoenix herb in my ring, a sky list crowning me and mine, and 35% of the entire domain's luck, the system informed me cheerfully, now flowed toward the Goo family like water toward a drain. In the old novel, that luck had flowed to one boy with a trust me smile, and the world had bent around him until it broke. Now it flowed to us, and somewhere out there, the world was already breeding new boys with new smiles to come and take it back. Let them come. I had gifts for everyone. The clan threw a celebration for the rankings, because when heaven hangs a scoreboard with your grandson's name on top, you invite the neighbors over to look at it. Everyone came, Holy Lands, Longevity clans, and in chains, as tribute from a recent border dispute, a delegation of alien royals, including a dragon girl named Zhao Long. Understand, this wasn't some scaled lizard princess. Zhao Long was an ancient freak, a pure-blooded descendant of an emperor dragon who'd sealed herself away eras ago when she ran out of worthy rivals and woke up into our generation like a retired champion crashing a youth tournament. She took one look at the #1 name on Heaven's list, decided chains were a temporary condition, and challenged me on the spot to a single exchange of fists. Fine. 1 exchange. Her fist carried the weight of an imperial bloodline and several geological periods of pride. Mine carried a golden phantom and a bell's worth of immortal bone. The courtyard afterward needed repaving, and Zhao Long stood in the middle of it, flexing feeling back into her arm, looking at me with the strangest expression. Not hatred, respect, and something like relief. The retired champion had found the tournament worth waking up for. She bowed precisely once and withdrew with more dignity in defeat than most people manage in victory. I liked her. Genuinely. Remember her too. Dragons hold grudges, but they hold respect even longer. The banquet's other guest was less charming. His name was Feng Jin, and my radar had flagged him weeks earlier. Son of luck #2. The replacement protagonist the world had sponsored after Joe Kai's account closed. His package deal included a tragic orphan backstory, a meteoric rise, and the classic a secret grandpa. Specifically, a ring on his finger housing the leftover soul of Bai Yun, a quasi-emperor from a dead era, feeding him techniques and treasure maps like a strategy guide with a ghost subscription. His latest acquisition was a stolen divine fire from the Calamity Holy Land, lifted off their young lord Cheng Xuan in a scheme so neat the poor kid got blamed for losing it. Feng Jin then strolled into our Heaven's Pride banquet wearing borrowed glory and a smile with the price tag still on it, and began working the room, aiming himself at 3 guesses, my women. Here's the thing about my eyes. Illusions, disguises, hidden treasures, stolen fires tucked into a soul pocket behind a false aura. To the double pupils, all of it is just a man standing in a room with his receipts hanging out. I let him get through half the banquet. Then, in front of every holy land in the domain, I asked him, politely, loudly, how the Calamity Holy Land's divine fire was settling into his soul pocket, and whether the quasi-emperor ghost in his ring wanted refreshments too. You could hear the silence arrive. It came in like a tide. Feng Jin's smile did something complicated. Cheng Xuan's family, in attendance, stood up as one unit, and their patriarch's voice had that low, careful tone that precedes atrocities. To his credit, the only credit he ever earned, Feng Jin didn't try to talk. The ring on his finger flared. Old Bai Yun burned a chunk of his remaining soul in one desperate king-level pulse, and boy and ghost blasted out through our roof and fled into the night sky, pursued by the curses of 4 clans and the sound of my grandfather asking who was paying for the roof. We caught up with him later at a place called the Fallen Heart Saint Relic, an ancient trial ground that opened that winter like a scheduled exam, and every young prodigy in the domain poured in. The relic's first floor was a dreamscape of luck made visible. Every genius walked its planes with a dragon of fortune coiling over their head, big or small, bright or guttering, your whole destiny displayed above you like a name tag at the world's most hostile conference. Most dragons were the size of ponies. Manhwa's was a pale empress silver serpent long enough to bridge rivers. The sociology of that floor deserves its own chronicle, because nothing improves honesty like involuntary name tags. Young masters who'd spent years advertising their destinies stood under dragons the size of house cats, coughing. One notorious braggart's dragon kept trying to hide behind his head. Qin Yu, 6 Mile Qin Yu, my frequent flyer, marched in braced for humiliation and discovered his dragon had grown to respectable warhorse size since his career change into humility. He was so moved he saluted me, and his dragon saluted mine, which nearly caused an incident because, say, the second floor was the fallen purgatory, and it wasn't a dream. Real fire, real bones, and real trouble. 2 alien princes, Rui and Long Wei, had smuggled themselves in with a stolen token and a shopping list, and the top 2 items on the list were Ruyu and Changge, not as opponents, as acquisitions. Alien Holy Lands had a nasty old tradition of taking human prodigies as living trophies to drain. They planned it well, I'll give them that. Separated the group with a maze array, herded the girls toward a kill box, and had 2 saint-level soul fragments riding shotgun and talismans for insurance because they'd heard what happened to people who annoyed me. They had not heard enough. Changge broke their maze herself. A reincarnated immortal does not get lost in a corn maze, gentlemen, and staged the world's most elegant trap. She let her aura flicker like an injury, limped convincingly, and waited. Feng Jin, trailing the aliens like a seagull behind a fishing boat, saw a wounded number 2 beauty and dove in to perform a heroic rescue he had personally done nothing to make necessary. That's the whole protagonist business model. Arson, then firefighting, then gratitude. She let him get his speech halfway out. I arrived on the punchline. The 2 alien princes died the way meteors die, briefly, brightly, and mostly as a light show for other people. Their insurance policy, the 2 Saint Soul fragments, rose out of the talismans to avenge them and were promptly introduced to 6 stacked seals of source law and the business end of an immortal bone. Result and reaction. The seals closed like a book, and the book went into the fire. And Feng Jin, his rescue interrupted, his backers gone, his ghost grandpa down to soul fumes, finally did the math on his own dragon of fortune, which had, over 2 floors, quietly shrunk from a river serpent to something you'd win at a carnival. He ran. They always run at the same point in the story, right after the math. He didn't make it out of the purgatory. I'll spare the details and keep the accounting. 1 fewer son of luck. 1 quasi-emperor ring in my pocket with a very talkative old ghost inside, and a career's worth of stolen treasure returned to families who now owed mine favors they'd be repaying for generations. 1 detail, though. 1 detail I want on the record, because it mattered later. When it ended, down in that lava-lit dark, the last of him should have burned to nothing. Instead, at the final moment, something under the purgatory pulled. A vortex deep beneath the molten rock, old and patient and completely uninterested in being examined, and it drank what was left and closed like an eye. My future sight got me exactly 1 frame of it, a frame of teeth. I stood at the edge a long moment, told absolutely no one, and added it to the file of things this world keeps under its floorboards. The world above the floorboards, meanwhile, had mail for me. Old Bai Yun, interrogated back home over tea he couldn't drink, coughed up his era's entire treasure map, 100 saint legacies, 20 quasi-emperor caches, 10 emperor-grade techniques, and the locations of 20 lost sites, half of which the clan signed straight over to me, the way you'd hand a teenager the keys to a country. And under the golden clouds of that winter, at the age when most prodigies celebrate forming their first inner core, I broke through into the enlightenment realm, the realm of touching the Tao itself, while the heavens rumbled overtime, and my golden sea turned its great wheel, and my fortune dragon lay coiled over the whole estate like a smug draft excluder. Number 1 on heaven's list, and finally starting to feel like it. Which is of course exactly when the world sent in the 3rd son of luck. And this one, I have to admit, was actually good. His name was Li Xianyang, divine son of the Changsheng Li family, and unlike the previous 2 applicants, this one came pre-installed with actual talent. 6th on heaven's list, face like a recruitment poster, and as of that spring, a brand new secret teacher, because the world had learned, no more trust me smiles. This time the sponsorship went underground. Deep in a sealed mountain, Li Xianyang had found a shackled presence calling itself the Swallowing Heaven Demon Lord, an upper realm exile, an immortal grade soul chained up down there since before our history books, still strong enough to teach and just weak enough to need an errand boy. It taught him a demonic scripture that let him swallow other cultivators' foundations without leaving a mark. Traceless, polite even, the good manners edition of theft. My radar flagged him. Manhwa's fortune reading flagged him harder, and with a twist that made me sit up. Her fate said that in the coming conflict, she was destined to be saved, and courted, by a humble small cultivator named Wen Shu. A 4th name. A 4th son of luck, still unhatched, waiting in a city called Yunlo for his cue, the underdog template, the trash of his clan who blooms at the exact moment a beautiful genius needs rescuing. The world was now running 2 protagonists in parallel. I genuinely felt flattered. We handled Li Xianyang first, or rather, Manhwa did. My cousin had taken to hunting her own destiny's loose ends with the enthusiasm of a woman editing a book she hated. She shadowed him, gathered proof of the missing cultivators dissolving into his cultivation base, and blew his cover at a summit in front of 5 holy lands. Devil cultivator, the words that end careers. It should have ended his, but his guardian, old Saint Yan Han, chose family over principle, smashed a wall, and extracted his poisoned golden boy before judgment landed. The Lai family closed ranks and called it slander. Fine. A grudge for later turned out to have plans of its own. Wen Shu we handled in Yunluo City, and I want to be precise about what happened there, because this is the one I got wrong. He hadn't done anything yet. That was the strangeness of it. I came to the city and found not a schemer, but a nobody, a clan discard with kind eyes, a loyal maid named Xia Lan, who was his whole world, and a Tai bead sleeping in his chest that he didn't even know about. The script hadn't activated him. I was early, and his backers were not. The moment my people moved to quietly take the bead, his clan's hidden ancestor, a soul parasite who'd been marinating in the boy's bloodline for generations, waiting to possess him at maturity, panicked and struck first, threw him at us. The fight was short and ugly. The maid Xiaolan threw herself into the middle of it, the way loyal people do, and didn't survive it. Wen Shu himself broke under his own ancestors' puppeting, and I put him down like the threat his body had become, and took the bead and called it a clean ending. Result and reaction. I left Yunluo City believing the fourth file was closed. I've had a lot of time to think about that night, and I keep landing in the same uncomfortable place. I came to Yunluo to close a threat before it activated, sensible, on paper. But the boy hadn't done anything yet. I was early, and being early meant I walked into a home instead of a scheme, a discarded kid with kind eyes and a maid who loved him, neither of them the monster my memory promised. When his ancestor parasite panicked and puppeted him at us, and the maid died in the middle of it, I put the body down because the body had become a weapon, and I told myself that was the same thing as putting down a villain. It wasn't quite. I know the difference. I chose not to look at it too hard, pocketed the bead, and rode home whistling, and the whistling is the part I can't defend. I'd spent a year telling myself I was rewriting a cruel script into a kind one. In Yunluo, for one night, I was just the script's cruelty wearing a nicer face. I don't get to be the hero of a story I keep this efficient. I'm at peace with that most days. That night is not most days. It wasn't closed either. What none of us saw, what even my eyes didn't catch, because I'd already turned away, was the boy's other talent, the one buried deeper than the bead. A nirvana divine body. Death as a starting line. In the cold ashes of that night, Wen Shu came back, and the first thing his reborn body did was turn on the ancestor parasite still tangled in his soul and devour it whole. Memories, treasure maps, hatred, and all. He stood up out of his own grave with his maid dead, his clan's secrets in his head, and one sentence on his lips about me, something to the effect of, "Even a grand unity golden immortal will not save you." I knew none of this. I rode home with a bead in my pocket, whistling, "Keep that file open. It stays open." I want to note, before the world got loud again, the one quiet thing I did on the ride back from Yunluo. I opened Meihua's fortune scroll and read the fourth line about Wen Shu, the one that said a humble small cultivator would save her and win her heart, and I read it knowing I'd just made sure that line would never happen. And I felt, instead of triumph, a small cold thing I didn't have a name for yet. I'd rerouted her destiny away from a stranger and toward myself. I keep doing that. Every gift, every intervention, every fortune I read ahead and quietly edit. I am bending 5 women's fates around me like light around a heavy thing, and I tell myself it's because the original road killed them all. It did. That's true. It's also the exact thing every villain in every story tells himself. I've decided I'll accept the resemblance and let the endings be the argument. Ask me again when everyone I love is old and safe and complaining about my snoring. That's the only proof I'm willing to offer. Home had turned festive in my absence because the heavens had hung a second scoreboard, the Feather Ascension Golden List, an omen the old records tied to one thing only, a golden age. An era so fat with fortune that multiple great emperors could rise in a single generation, where normally the heavens ration out one per age like a stingy landlord. Every clan in the domain lost its collective mind. The Emperor Road would open, the Outpost Worlds would open, 300 battlegrounds between here and godhood. And our clan's genealogists, digging through the excitement, surfaced a fact I hadn't known. The Gu family wasn't from here. We were a refugee branch. The main bloodline lived unimaginably far away, in a mainline world called the Beidou Dao Domain, the star all roads led to. Along with the fact came 2 names whispered by traders from that direction, of the monsters my generation would find waiting there. Xiao Ran, an immortal's reincarnation. Wang Cheng, a former immortal emperor reborn, whose personal motto was reportedly, "My fate is in my own hands." Wonderful. The final boss lobby had a queue. Before any of that, though, came the small business of my eyes. It started at a family banquet, with a guest named Qin Yu, 11th on Heaven's list, a divine son from the Shui clan, with a rich inner life and no filter between it and his mouth. He'd had some wine, decided the seating chart undervalued him, and made a speech about how the #1 ranking was clearly sentimental. I flicked him off the mountain. Open palm, one motion. He described a beautiful arc over the outer wall, and the crater he made was, by the surveyor's account, a comfortable 6 miles from his chair. He climbed out of it a changed man, not humbled, clarified. He went home, trained like a demon, and came back months later 2 realms stronger and weirdly loyal to me. Some men you win with kindness. Some men need to travel 6 miles by air. The real event, though, I gifted the Taiyi bead to Ruyu. The wheel spun and gave back a Taiyi immortal pearl, and inside my golden sea, that pearl drifted straight toward the vermilion bird's immortal fire that had settled there, and the 2 of them fused. Nobody asked me. My spirit sea just decided to do alchemy on its own, and out of the reaction rose something new. A divine fire pearl of pure immortal source, which floated up through my body, split in 2, and settled behind my eyes. The double pupils drank it. When the light faded, my eyes weren't the double pupils anymore. They were immortal eyes. True immortal organs in a universe whose laws ban immortal anything. And when I opened them for the first time, twin beams of gold went up through the clouds, through the sky, through the membrane of the world, and knocked politely on the gates of the actual immortal court, somewhere above all realities. The clan's response was measured and calm. 2 quasi-emperor ancestors erupted out of 10,000-year seclusion like startled pheasants. The entire mountain got wrapped in a heaven-deceiving array, and a clan-wide gag order went out with the penalty listed as 3 generations, all of them. Grandpa Wenju was honorably relieved as my guardian and replaced by Ancestor Kai, older, scarier, and, at that particular moment, still a dried-up old monster who smelled faintly of the coffin he'd been napping in. Remember the coffin smell. It becomes relevant and then it becomes hilarious. Changge's turn came next, because being second on Heaven's list makes you a target for everyone who can't reach the first name. The plot came from inside her own holy land. A senior sister of Yaochi named Fan Shi had spent years being the resident jewel, and Changge's rise sat in her throat like a fishbone. So Fan Shi did what jealous people with connections do. She outsourced 13 alien prodigies smuggled into Yaochi's outer mountains for an ambush, and not junk either. The headliner was Ao Sheng of the Chongqi royal clan, an ancient monster who had self-sealed eras ago as the #1 of his own generation, freshly thawed and hungry for a famous kill. 13 Enlightenment realm freaks against 1 holy maiden, with a poisoned banquet beforehand to soften her and 2 of her junior sisters, a slow venom in the tea, brewed to hollow out a cultivator's meridians over a night. They got the ambush site right, the timing right, the poison dosage right. The only variable they missed was that Changge's fortune scrolls across my vision like a news ticker, and I'd been in the area for 2 days, fishing and waiting. I dropped into the middle of their encirclement out of a clear sky, and before anyone finished their opening speech, they always have a speech, I let the Immortal King technique off its leash. Not a punch, just pressure. The Dharma phantom rose over the mountains, golden and vast, and 13 apex predators of 13 bloodlines discovered that their knees had opinions of their own. All 13, kneeling in a circle, in the dirt, mid-speech, like the world's most hostile flower arrangement. Ao Sheng fought it hardest. Give the fossil his due. He got 1 knee back off the ground, eyes bulging, veins like river deltas, and ground out the words, "I'll remember you." The feeling wasn't mutual. My eyes opened, twin lines of gold crossed the clearing, and 13 threats plus 1 jealous senior sister stopped being biographical subjects. At the soul level, the record shows nothing left to bury. The event stays. The description you can imagine. The poison I burned out of the 3 women with the golden light of the same eyes. The venom hissed out of their meridians like water off a forge. And Changge, who had watched the entire intervention with winter sky calm, was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You keep arriving before the disaster does." I said reading ahead was a hobby. She looked at me the way you look at a book whose ending you suspect you already know, and didn't press. Instead, she gave me a gift of her own. A true dragon fruit from Yaochi's oldest tree, and the system, delighted at bidirectional traffic, returned it as a true dragon undying medicine, a second immortality herb, this one shaped like a sleeping dragon the length of my forearm. I refined it that same month, and the refinement broke my engine open. The heavenly Tao fate wheel in my spirit sea had been turning for a year like patient clockwork. The dragon medicine hit those golden waters, and the whole mechanism transcended. The sea deepened by an order I stopped measuring. The wheel reforged itself into something the old records call an extreme Tao fate wheel, black inscriptions crawling across its rim, script no one alive could read, humming with meaning at a frequency only the immortal bone answered, and the medicine itself didn't dissolve, it woke. A golden dragon, miles of it, materialized in my inner sea and began to swim, and from that day forward, every single thing I did, every punch, every flick, every sneeze, came with dragon behind it. The heavens noticed. The clan's deceiving array strained like a tarp over a volcano, and my grandfather's generation held a very quiet meeting about what, exactly, they were raising. Their conclusion arrived indirectly. I'd gifted the clan my spare vermilion bird undying medicine, the phoenix herb, as a filial gesture, expecting them to enshrine it. Instead, the elders held a council and fed it to Ancestor Kai, the coffin-scented quasi-emperor who'd taken over my guardianship. The old monster consumed an immortality herb, slept for 7 days, and shed his entire old age like a snake sheds skin. The man who walked out of that seclusion chamber was tall, black-haired, insufferably handsome for someone 12,000 years old, and full of vigor measured in geological units. A second life. The rarest miracle in cultivation, powered by my gift receipts. He celebrated by carving my name onto the clan monument of merit, a wall reserved for ancestors who saved the family from extinction, where every other name belongs to somebody dead, and then challenged me to guess his age, twice, and was delighted both times. They also stopped smelling him before they heard him, which he mentioned often. The coffin era was over. So there we stood at the turn of the season. My women's fortunes all pointed at the same date like compass needles. 3 months out, in the northern region, something called the Great Emperor's Secret Realm would surface. The tomb of an ancient supreme, stuffed with inheritances. The scrolls promised complications. Manhwa, Ruyu, and Li Yue would cross paths in there with Li Xianyang, our friendly neighborhood devil cultivator, who had gone into deep seclusion with his demon teacher, specifically sharpening a knife with my name on it. The scrolls also promised the girls would fall into an abyss and climb out of it carrying an emperor's legacy, because in my family even our disasters run a profit, and one more storm was checking in. In the alien lands of the Changge, the royal clan had made a decision about their thawed prince's death. They went to their deepest vault and woke the twin, Ao Feng, brother of the one my eyes erased, sealed at the peak of his era, 5 layers of enlightenment before the freeze, guarded by a quasi-emperor named Kui Gang, and awakened for 2 stated purposes, sworn on his clan's altar: kill Han Qingyi, defeat Lin Yuan. I read the intelligence report twice, mostly for the name, Ao Feng. If you built the concept of arrogance a body and taught it to walk, the paperwork would say, Ao Feng. 3 months, 1 tomb, every storm in the domain booking the same venue. I started packing gifts. The tomb announced itself the way emperors do. It made the entire world stop talking. On a gray morning 3 months later, the ground of the northern region split, and a bell the size of a mountain rose out of the earth, black bronze, older than the calendar, ringing one note that rolled across the whole central heaven Dao domain and made every cultivator alive feel briefly deeply employed by someone. Emperors might. You don't learn to recognize it. Your bones come pre-installed with the kneeling instinct, and the bell was pulling on it from a billion miles away. Then the bell spoke. One sentence, in a voice like time clearing its throat, heard simultaneously by every soul in the domain. At the end of the immortal path, who stands at the peak? The old ancestors identified it between heart attacks. The nameless emperor, the strongest human sovereign in recorded history, born in the era when heaven itself was broken, proved his Tao in 500 years flat, swept the Forbidden Zones solo, and exited history with one line about being nameless and faceless, without beginning or end. His tomb, containing at minimum a wisp of his actual soul, had chosen our generation to open for. The domain lost its mind in an orderly fashion. Every clan warship in existence converged on the northern region like iron filings on a magnet. We went too, obviously, me, Manhwa, Ruyu, Li Yue, with Ancestor Kai riding escort in his shiny new body and enjoying the way nobody recognized him. Chingge messaged that Yaochi was en route. Princess Yu Yao of the Sun Court, an old friend from a previous arc, sent word she'd meet us there. And ahead of us all, of course, someone had already started a show. We heard him before we saw the tomb, a voice like a rock slide with self-esteem, rolling across 10,000 miles of parked warships. Han Qingyi, Gu Changge, come out and face your death. Ao Feng had arrived early and set up a formal challenge camp outside the Emperor's tomb. 100-foot frame wrapped in blood-colored fire, voice permanently set to landslide, and a mission statement he repeated every few minutes for the benefit of new arrivals. The crowd's reaction had gone through several phases before we landed. Phase 1. Who is this? Because his name wasn't on Heaven's list, and a nobody talking like that is comedy. Phase 2. Oh no. Because a local hero, Yang Dingtian of the Dangxia Pavilion, ranked 29th, accepted the challenge with his sect's legendary dragon-slaying fist and got folded in one punch, at which point Heaven's List quietly deleted Yang Dingtian and wrote Long Aotian in his slot, which is when everyone realized the list had been waiting for him to hit someone. Phase 3. Genuine fear. Because next came my 6-mile frequent flyer Qin Yu, 11th seed, 2 realms stronger than his banquet days, opening with an extended speech about how he preferred to be polite first and violent second, and Ao Feng hit him during the speech. No martial ethics whatsoever. Qin Yu described his second great arc through the atmosphere, and the old ancestors in the crowd started dredging up records. A Changge prodigy from the last era's Great War of 10,000 races, who'd personally killed 580 Dao Realm masters, fought 40 at once and walked away, then sealed himself because, his words, carved into a monument somewhere, being invincible was lonely. By the time Goddess Mei Ling, fourth on the list, stepped up to defend the generation's honor and got told to go home and fetch someone worth his time, the crowd had fully converted. Chants started. Ao Feng is invincible. He stood there in the sky soaking it in, arms wide, declaiming to the heavens, I declared myself an era. I woke and am still unmatched. Greatness is such loneliness, which is when I finally spoke up from the back of the crowd, conversational volume, and let the wind carry it. Who dares to claim invincibility here? 10,000 heads turned. I stepped off the warship, up onto empty air, and gave him the rest of it. Only I, Gu Changge. And because manners matter, I sent my greeting ahead of me. The sky split, gold poured through, and a dragon-wrapped fist the size of a hill came down on his head out of the clouds with the roar of my inner sea behind it. To his enormous credit, he caught it. First being in this story to catch one. His feet dug twin trenches half a mile long, his blood fire flared like a dying sun, and his face, I'll never forget this, lit up with pure joy. You've finally come, he bellowed, shaking out his arms. You are qualified to be my opponent. Then he showed me why the last era had needed him sealed. His body doubled, sky-supporting overlord frame, 300 feet of him. Then it tripled. 6 wild beasts, body integration, and suddenly, I was looking up at 900 feet of 3-headed, 6-armed prehistory, an authentic sky-holding monster out of the age of myths, radiating pressure that made saints in the audience sit down without meaning to. He held the sun and moon in 2 of his 6 hands, rhetorically. He asked if I was scared, non-rhetorically. I told him 900 feet was a nice height, very visible, easy to aim at. What followed wasn't the war the crowd wanted, it was something better. I hit him with the plain version of my fist. No bone, no eyes, just the sea and the dragon, and 900 feet of legend went down into the plain like a dropped wardrobe. Crater, dust, silence. He got up. I respect that. He always got up. I hit him again. Crater, deeper. He got up again, slower, furious, and I said the sentence that I'm told is now carved into the folklore of 2 races. If I tell you to kneel, then kneel properly. The third crater was a kilometer deep. And from the bottom of it, out of the dust and the humiliation and the wreckage of an era's pride, came his answer, roared with absolute sincerity, if you're so capable, make me stand up. The entire audience of 10,000 miles made a sound I can only describe as 10,000 teapots reaching boil at once. Somewhere in our delegation, Ruyu fell off the warship railing laughing. Even Chingge's winter sky face developed a hairline fracture at the mouth. He tried everything after that, and I want that on the record too, because the man was not a joke even while being extremely funny. He threw a pagoda at me, an actual Sangrad tower, the heaven-shaking tower of heaven and earth, whipped out mid-kneel like a card up a sleeve, and bought himself 4 whole seconds of standing. He burned bloodline reserves that turned the sky red. He fought with a purity of intention I'd honestly missed since this world started sending me schemers instead of warriors. And 10,000 miles away, watching through a divine sense projection, a certain devil cultivator was taking notes. I learned the details later, but Li Xianyang spent that whole beating in urgent conference with the Demon Lord in his soul jade, running the numbers on his own planned assassination of me. His master's assessment, delivered in the tone of a mechanic looking at a wreck, 70% odds with the family's quasi-emperor cauldron, 90 if you burn your cultivation with the forbidden art. 90, the old demon added, is not 100. Never underestimate what that man is still holding back. For once in his life, the demon was giving good advice. Because I hadn't used the bone, I hadn't used the eyes, and the wheel in my sea with the unreadable black script, that one, even I hadn't finished finding the bottom of. The kneeling marathon ended the way these things end. An adult showed up. Just as my next fist was about to make the crater a permanent geographic feature, a withered hand the size of a courtyard came out of nowhere and caught it. The pressure that followed made 10,000 miles of spectators feel like fish in a draining pond. Quasi-emperor. Guigong, ancient guardian of the Changge, dead-eyed and enormous, stepping out of the void with the full stop. He has been defeated. Why must you exterminate him? Energy of a man who had slept through the invention of most modern grudges. He tried the soul pressure trick first, the standard elder move, squeeze the junior's spirit until his courage files for leave. My spirit rolled it off like rain off a roof, which visibly unsettled him, so he widened the pressure to the whole audience, at which point a human quasi-emperor in the crowd stood up and loudly suggested that bullying 10,000 children was perhaps beneath the dignity of the emperor's rank. The crowd, alien races included, agreed at volume. Old Kuigang stood there taking public opinion damage from 4 directions, and I watched a being older than nations discover the modern concept of ratioed. Then I pressed the legal angle, because why not? The challenge had been to the death, his prince had sworn it on arrival, and interference in a death pact duel is, by every code in existence, shameless. The word landed on the old monster like a slap. He blustered. I quoted his prince's own speeches back at him with timestamps. The crowd murmured supportively. It was, and I say this with warmth, the finest bullying of my career, and that's when the second adult arrived, and the day stopped being about me. The pressure that rolled in from the horizon made Kuigang's aura feel like weather. A figure in white crossed 100,000 miles in 10 unhurried steps. Young face, black hair to the waist, power that read as more than quasi-emperor and less than god, a combination that fit no known record. The whole assembly cycled through their catalogs and found nothing. And then the figure spoke to the Chongqi ancestor in a voice like an old friend picking a very old fight. Kuigang. 3,000 years, and you're still bullying juniors. I knew the voice. I just couldn't make my eyes agree until the divine soul imprint in my spirit pinged like a doorbell, and I said it out loud, in front of everyone, with zero composure. Ancestor Kai, the most feared new powerhouse in the domain, turned around, beamed at me, and said, "Brat, you only recognize me now?" Behind us, Ruyu leaned over the warship rail, squinted at the tall, handsome stranger, and delivered the assessment that made 3 holy lands bite through their sleeves. "Ancestor, you don't smell like dirt anymore." The old monster's eye twitched with the effort of maintaining gravitas. The vermilion bird herb had done more than restore him. It had put him a full class above his old rival, and watching Kuigang process that was better than the duel. 2 boys from the same ancient graduating class. One had spent the millennia guarding a vault and rationing his lifespan out in careful sips, and the other had eaten my gift receipt and come back 20 years old with product in his hair. Kuigang's massive shoulders did something I can only call a sigh with structural implications. "You live a second life," he said, and it wasn't a question, it was a eulogy for his own. The standoff resolved itself the way old monsters resolve things, with face saving on layaway, and then the tomb took over the schedule. The great bell rang a 3rd time, its inscriptions peeled off into the sky, and spun themselves into a rotating gate of light 1,000 feet wide. A voice from inside stamped the boarding rules onto every soul present. The realm was open, Ascension realm and below only. The youth of a domain surged forward. Kuigang, in one last act of guardianship, grabbed his kneel-worn prince and shot-putted him through the portal ahead of the crowd, out of my reach. I let it go. Ancestor Kai watched them vanish and gave me the send-off of a man who had personally tested my warranty. The strongest opponent is the best whetstone. Go. We went, me and all 4 women, into the light, where the realm promptly did what my fortune readings had warned it would. It shuffled us like cards and dealt us to opposite ends of creation. I came out falling. Under me spread the truth of the nameless emperor's tomb. Not a building, a sea, a black ocean of void, and floating on it, 9 shattered stars arranged around a distant knot of purple light, with a storm of broken space-time between here and there that my eyes flagged as instantly lethal to anything under quasi-emperor. 9 dragons guarding 1 pearl. The pearl was the tomb. The dragons were the star fragments, and I'd been dealt onto the fragment whose terrain my source reading skills identified with rising enthusiasm as catastrophically cursed. A black mountain, wreathed in fog, sitting on a dragon vein with no guardian formations. In feng shui terms, a throne with the legs sawn off. Everything about it said the teleportation array to the tomb is at the bottom of this, and also, don't. Around me, a few hundred fellow travelers had been dealt the same card, and they did what crowds do around me now. They formed up behind my back with the instant total confidence of ducklings adopting a lawnmower. We found the entrance, a mined-out divine source vein, a tunnel 1,000 feet tall, breathing cold, wrong air that made everyone's soul itch. Down we went. The itch got teeth. They came out of the dark laughing. That's the detail everyone remembers afterward. The giggling, red-haired things, man-shaped, fast as regrets. The first one hit our vanguard and shrugged off supreme abilities like compliments. Then the tunnel lit with hundreds of pairs of eyes, and the fine young flowers of a whole domain began composing their last words. Actual speeches broke out. A heroic chorus of "We die proving our Tao," delivered by people edging backward while saying it. Yang Dingtian, recovered, humble, and here to grind, announced that his unbeatable dragon fist at least couldn't be hurt by the monsters, which is the most honest advertising that technique ever had. I let the despair marinate for exactly as long as it was funny, and then told them the truth. I'd said escape was impossible. I never said dealing with it was. Someone asked what I was going to do, and because the moment demanded it, I gave the crowd the line, and I stand by it. Nothing mysterious, but it's going to look very cool. 1 seal. The Void Realm. Seal. A golden slab of sky stamped down through the whole tunnel with the dragon roaring in its grain, and every red-haired horror in that mind stopped mid-giggle and became sediment. Hundreds. One motion. The silence afterward had a texture, like the whole cave was mouthing the word, "Oh." The ducklings reorganized behind me, at a respectful distance and a worshipful angle. Deeper we went, past the bones of miners 1,000,000 years dead, and past the thing I'd actually smelled from the surface, a tree. A dead-looking colossus growing out of a graveyard of fossils, roots threading between the bones without touching a single one, too proud to feed on the dead, growing on pure geomantic fortune in a lightless pit. The crowd picked its ordinary fruit and felt their minds go quiet. My eyes went through the bark and found the real prize hiding inside the trunk like a heart, a fruit glowing with the light of pure comprehension, Bodhi enlightenment fruit, the thing legends eat before becoming legends. I tore the trunk open bare-handed and swallowed the fruit into my spirit sea, where it did something no one warned me about. It sprouted a person. A phantom of me, sitting cross-legged above my golden waters, radiating the calm of a sage who has finished all his homework forever. From that moment on, understanding stopped being work. Texts opened themselves, concepts queued up politely. I'd been the strongest one in every room for a year. Now I was about to be the smartest one too. Heaven helped the curriculum. Below the tree line, the mind got biblical. We passed murals first. A 1,000,000-year-old comic strip carved in stone. Panel 1. Ancient miners striking a divine source, the purest treasure vein this universe makes. Panel 2. Something waking up under it. Panel 3. A lot fewer miners. Panel 4. A human figure wreathed in imperial light putting the something down and sealing it under the mountain. My eyes lingered on the something, winged, man-shaped. Kneeling before the divine source like a worshipper or a prisoner, the murals declined to specify which in my experience means both. Then the mind opened into a miracle. A pocket of rose-gold light in the dead, dark, warm air, flowering meadows, cranes calling. An entire hidden paradise, and the ducklings scattered into it squealing about 9th-grade spirit stones and blood dragon grass, and I stood at the tree line not moving, because my source training was quietly screaming, "Paradise doesn't grow in a tomb. Paradise leaks." Something down here was bleeding divine source energy on purpose, the way an angler bleeds bait. The angler introduced itself at dusk. A sigh rolled through the meadow. The sound of something waking from a nap measured in epochs, and then a black hand the size of a courthouse came out of the ground and started collecting souls. It got 8 of the ducklings before the rest of the flock made the tree line. The hand's owner spoke from underground with the bored courtesy of a landlord. "This is the Emperor's forbidden ground. Mortals, offer up your souls." Everyone looked at me. That's the arrangement now. Something ancient wakes up. Everyone looks at me. So I introduced myself back. 9 earth dragons, conjured straight out of the terrain with formation art off the Source Heaven book, dove into the ground, wrapped whatever was down there, and hauled. Out came the mural's monster, 100 feet of corpse-pale muscle, black wings, black fire, a face like a closed courthouse. It called itself Kai, head of the 9 Dragons Guard of the Changge Heavenly Emperor, an actual employee of an actual primordial god king, sealed here by the nameless emperor personally. It demanded our souls with the confidence of a creature that had eaten every previous generation of visitors. And then it discovered the fundamental problem of its situation, which was this: it couldn't leave the light. The nameless emperor's seal held it inside its own leaked paradise like a fish in a bowl, and I could stand at the edge of the bowl, and my fists reached inside just fine. Better, every time an immortal bone punch landed on it, the paradise shrank. Its whole escape plan was that meadow. Its parole hearing was every square foot of rose-gold light, and my fist was the judge denying appeals one by one. What followed was, and historians of that realm agree, the least dignified thing to happen to a primordial being in recorded time. It hid underground. My earth dragons pulled it back up by the ankles. It begged. I declined. It offered me ancient scriptures, secret realms, imperial treasures, the full late-night infomercial. And I kept punching, because a creature the murals show harvesting miners by the thousand does not get to negotiate with the descendant demographic. It screamed, "Nameless, let me out at the sky," with such volume that the fossils vibrated. The paradise shrank from miles to yards. On the last punch, the meadow snapped shut like a purse. The monster went back under the mountain with its bowl reduced to a puddle, and the leaked divine essence it had spent millennia exhaling condensed in the air into a fist-sized coil of light. Divine source Mother Chi. The raw clay of creation. Legends argue about whether it exists. I put it in my sea, where the sage phantom examined it like a jeweler and approved. Which mattered immediately, because behind paradise lay the actual gate. A pair of pits breathing yin and yang, one geyser of pure vitality, one well of malice so dense it snapped a tester's flying sword like a cracker. The teleportation array to the Emperor's tomb sat on the far side of the malice. Skeletons floated in the murk between, saints, plural, and at least one quasi-emperor, all of them people who'd been very sure about their defensive techniques. No brute forcing that, so I engineered it. The Mother Chi could evolve a livable pocket. That was the monster's own trick, the whole paradise scam. So I anchored it at the yin pit's edge, fed it with the yang geyser, and grew my own bridge of rose gold light across the killing dark 1 yard a day while cultivating in the geyser like it was a hot spring. 3 days of glowing real estate development later, my paradise bridged their hell, and a few hundred ducklings crossed behind me in reverent single file to the array. Meanwhile, and I had no eyes on this at the time, the fortunes filled it in later, and I've never decided whether to laugh or punch a wall. The rest of my people were having their own realm. Changge had the dignified version. Her fragments array led to a tower, the Emperor Tower, a trial that pitted every arriving prodigy against each other for beams of qualifying light. Last soul standing gets the door. Zhao Long the Dragon Girl was there, hungry for a rematch with Destiny, and got a full course of it. My Winter Sky Maiden, who once carried an emperor's corpse across a battlefield in a previous life, informed the assembled talent that she'd give the dragon exactly 1 chance, then folded her with 2 immortal techniques and collected every light in the arena. The tower opened for her, alone. Inside, the Emperor's lingering voice keyed open another drawer of her past life memory, and she came out days later a realm higher with a sword art that splits mountains as a warm-up. Ruyu and Li Yue got the other version. Their fragments array spat them out into Lie Xianyang's hunting ground. The devil cultivator had prepped his corner of the realm like a spider does, a concealment array from his demon master sealing the area from all outside senses, mine included, and every weaker prodigy who'd landed there already drained into his foundation. Then my girls walked in, and he decided to upgrade from murder to collecting. He beat them back with the quasi-emperor Cauldron and his master's demon arts, both of them fighting brilliantly and losing anyway because the gap was real, and herded them to the lip of a black abyss with the classic collector's offer: surrender and be my trophies or drop. Manhwa stood on that edge with her sisters, did the math I couldn't see her do, and remembered something from a life I didn't yet know she'd lived. Someone had fallen into this exact abyss once before, and climbed out carrying a miracle. She looked at Ruyu and Li Yue and said one word: gamble. They jumped. All 3, holding hands, into the dark, leaving Li Xianyang screaming at the edge of his own trap like a man watching his winning lottery ticket blow into a storm drain. At the bottom of the world, past the fall, ran a flood of raw time. The realm's space-time turbulence pooled into a torrent where every droplet was a moment of some past or future, and the spray coming off it carried karma the way sea spray carries salt. The 3 of them sat on a cliff above it for 2 days, fishing in eternity. Manhwa netted a strand of immortal gold. Her supreme bone drank it and matured years ahead of schedule, and her palm art turned into something the old records only attribute to empresses. Ruyu caught a coil of primal yin-yang essence, and her divine body clicked into its completed form like a lock finally meeting its key. Li Yue, quiet, patient Li Yue, caught the ghost of an immortal sword, refined it, and stood up off that cliff with a sword art that made her king-grade blade sing in its sheath. Then the flood rose, the cliff shrank, and my 3 drowning rich geniuses did the only thing left, jumped again, into a still pool of pooled time, destination unknown. The pool read their luck, or their luck read the pool. It dropped them inside the purple mountain, directly behind the man who'd pushed them into the abyss, who was, at that moment, sitting in front of a stone stele, deep in study, radiating scholarly satisfaction. I should say what those 2 days were like on my end, because the fortunes don't capture it. I knew abstractly that they'd be fine. I'd read Manhwa's luck before we ever entered the tomb, and it promised an abyss and a prophet. But abstract knowledge is a thin blanket when the woman you're engaged to, and the cousin you refuse to gut, and the maid who outstubborned her whole sect have all just fallen off a cliff into a river of raw time, and the concealment array over Lie Xianyang's corner meant I couldn't even sense them to confirm the scroll. So I did the math the way I do all my math. I trusted the fortune, and I moved fast anyway, because trusting the numbers and hurrying are not opposites, whatever calmer men tell you. I bridged a hell of malice with rose gold light in 3 days flat, cultivating in a geyser to save minutes, and the whole time one small unhelpful part of my brain kept whispering, what if the scroll is wrong just this once? It wasn't. It never has been. That's exactly why it's terrifying to rely on. And that is where I come back into the story, because I just crossed my rose gold bridge, ridden the dragon vein array into the purple mountain myself, and walked up on the same scene from the other side. My 3 women, alive, upgraded, and wearing identical expressions of predatory delight. Between us, unaware, sat Lie Xianyang, studying. You're going to want the details of what he was studying. Trust me. It's the best joke in this entire tomb. The stele he was studying held a legacy from God King Han Wei. The battle secret, one of the fabled 9 secrets. 9 scattered techniques that, united, supposedly crown you sovereign of the 10 heavens. Heaven itself broke the set apart out of jealousy. Finding even one is a destiny-grade event. Lai Xianyang had found one. He'd been camped in front of it for a month, meditating himself cross-eyed, while his demon master cheered from the soul jade. And here's the joke, the beautiful, perfect joke. The concealment array his master had woven around the area, the one hiding him from the world, didn't work on my eyes. I could see the stele through it. So I sat down outside his invisible fence, got comfortable, and began comprehending the same legacy over his shoulder. With a Bodhi-grade sage in my skull, the first layer took half a day. The stele flashed to acknowledge it. Lie. Xianyang's eyes snapped open. It responded. It must be my accumulated effort finally breaking through. His master concurred. My disciple, your comprehension is heaven-defying. Second layer, half a day. Flash. Master, I've advanced again. The demon lord, moved nearly to tears. You have the bearing of a devil emperor. I comprehended all 9 layers in under 3 days. 9 flashes. 9 escalating celebrations on the other side of the fence, a full graduation ceremony of delusion, master and disciple toasting each other over my homework. When the 9th layer sealed into me, the characters on the stele, their purpose complete, evaporated. Lai Xianyang stared at the blank rock, but I don't feel any different. Master, why don't I feel the great achievement? Don't be greedy, the demon lord said sagely. Digest what you have. He had nothing. He had a month of neck cramps. I have never wanted to applaud a scam more, and I was the scam. That's when the girls dropped out of the time pool behind him. I broke his master's precious, unbreakable array with one targeted punch to its keystone. The demon lord's scream of that formation cannot be broken by anyone beneath an emperor is a treasured memory, and Li Xianyang finally learned, all at once, in front of everyone. 1. His trap victims were alive. 2. They'd come back upgraded. 3. His invisible fence was see-through. And 4. The stele flashes had been me. The sound he made was not a word in any language. To his credit, devil, coward, collector of people, he could fight. When Ruyu came for him with her completed yin-yang body, he met her seal for seal. When Li Yue's new immortal sword art joined in, he matched them both with the family's quasi-emperor cauldron blazing. And when Meihua's matured supreme bone entered the conversation and the 3 of them finally cornered him, he pulled the actual forbidden card, burning his own cultivation for a multiplier, the blood fire of a man spending his future to survive his present. And for one genuinely alarming moment, all 3 of my monsters were on the back foot against a human bonfire. Everyone looked at me. Correct arrangement. I gave him 1 fist. The 9 heavens battle secret, his stele, his month, his neck cramps, dressed the blow, and the fist put him through his own cauldron, off a cliff face, and into the floor of the purple mountain in the shape of a star. The cauldron itself pinwheeled away and embedded in a cliff like a decorative plate. His guardian arrived while the dust was still airborne. Old Saint Yan Han, tearing through space with clan honor in his teeth, and I greeted him with a sentence I'd been saving. I'm about to kill your divine son. Do you have anything to say? He had many things to say. Then he saw the black devil mist boiling off his golden boy where my eyes had burned away the disguise, and every one of those things died in his throat. Devil cultivation, publicly displayed. Under every code his own faction wrote, unprotectable. Lai Xianyang went to the Yellow Springs with his master's forbidden art still smoking on him, and this time no wall opened. The soul went too. My eyes made sure, vermilion fire down to the last flicker, because devil cultivators keep receipts and I don't leave refunds. His master's remnant soul in the black jade tablet tried bargaining from inside the storage bag. I can make you a devil emperor, right up until the immortal fire reached it. The last words of the terrifying swallowing heaven demon lord, scourge of an era, were, and I quote the divine sense recording, ow ow, that's actually hot, ow. Yanhan, to cap it, tried to quietly repossess the family cauldron from the cliff on his way out. I asked him what he thought he was doing with my cauldron. He said, everyone knows the Hun Tian cauldron belongs to the Lai family. I explained the new provenance. His devil son had swung it at me. I had confiscated it mid-swing. Spoils law is spoils law. And if the saint disagreed, he was welcome to disagree the way his son had. The old man's beard achieved independent flight. He reached for the cauldron anyway. Pride is a hell of a drug, and my void palm met his reaching soul projection and dispersed it across the local weather. A saint's spirit wisp, gone in one motion in front of a realm's worth of witnesses. The audience did that tea kettle sound again. Somebody in the back started the phrase that would follow me across the stars, at the end of the immortal path, who stands at the peak, and somebody else finished it. Meet Lin Yuan once, and your Tao turns to air. Terrible poetry, stuck instantly. You can't fight folk meter. And then the system, which had been patiently watching me acquire things all day, cleared its throat. A binding target had been detected nearby. I checked the perimeter. My 3, already bound. Goddess Mei Ling, 4th on the list, hovering at the edge of my orbit. Not her, apparently. The system's standards remained mysterious. Then my eyes crossed Li Yue, my snow-haired maid, fresh off refining a strand of immortal sword, and the panel bloomed. Her ordeal in the abyss had transformed her far enough that the system now rated her. Whatever its standards were, they weren't just about faces. File that too. I bound her on the spot and celebrated with Distribution Day because my backpack had become a dragon's hoard with a strap. The Bodhi Enlightenment Fruit, the original, my sagemaker, went to Li Yue so her comprehension could keep pace with her new sword. Return 10,000-fold. A Bodhi Immortal Fruit came back, which planted a second, better sage in my sea, this one radiating so much clarity that difficult texts started apologizing to me. The Huntian Cauldron went to Ruyu, who received a quasi-emperor divine weapon with the businesslike nod of a girl being handed a very large stick to hit bad people with. Return, a complete set of emperor weapon forging materials. Not an emperor weapon, the materials, which is better, for reasons that deserve their own scene and are going to get one. And the divine source Mother Chi went to manhwa, whose supreme bone drank creation's clay and began, quietly, to grow a second one, a second supreme bone. The heavens allot one per era, usually. My cousin was now double parked on destiny, her return, 10,000-fold. Xuanhuang Mother Chi, the origin essence of the universe's first dawn, the stuff reality was prototyped in. I stood in the purple mountain holding the raw material of existence, surrounded by upgraded women and the smoking crater of a devil sun, and the system chimed once more, softly, like a shop bell at closing time. Somewhere above all skies, I would later learn, a woman in a bronze mask had just glanced down for the very first time at the strange bright dot my life made on the fabric of things. She kept watching. They always keep watching. Mei Hua led us to the tomb's true entrance like a woman walking through her own house in the dark. I noticed. I filed it with the rest of her impossible navigation. The file was getting thick enough to need its own shelf. The cave she chose ran deep under the purple mountain, and just inside it, the realm showed us its most beautiful nightmare, a divine source, a raw crystal of creation the size of a house, with a woman sealed inside it. Not a statue, a woman. Breathtaking past the point where the word does work, serene as deep water, preserved mid-sleep in the purest treasure medium reality produces. The murals in the Black Mountain had shown an empress sealing monsters. The face matched. Some ancient human sovereign had ended up entombed in crystal in her enemy's front yard, and no record anywhere said why. And through her crystal, faint as smoke and glass, threaded strands of red hair, the same red as the giggling things in the mine. Whatever 8 source masters at the end of their lives had gotten to an empress, my whole spine filed a complaint. I ordered everyone. Nothing in this cave gets touched. Naturally, someone touched. A prodigy in our tale of followers leaned in too close, guided by curiosity and whatever else moves fools near beautiful sleeping women. And slender white hands came through the crystal surface and took him by the wrist, gentle as a bride, while red hair crawled down the perfect arms toward his skin. His friends hauled him back shrieking. The hands withdrew. The empress slept on, serene, terrible, patient. 3 of the people involved in that little tug of war started itching that same evening. Remember the itching. Deeper in, we picked up family. Hao Yue, my golden retriever cousin, fresh off his own fragment and glowing with new breakthroughs, delighted to find us and immediately concerned about the company I kept. Specifically Li Yue, whose existence as my devoted maid struck 5th on the list Wei Ming as a status crime against his sister. His solution, because he's Hao Yue, was sport, a monster-slaying contest. Whoever kills more of whatever comes, wins. If I win, he drops the chaperone act. What came, minutes later, was the itching. 3 of our followers going down screaming as red hair burst from their skins, plus 100 more original recipe red monsters flooding up from the deep tunnels, drawn by the noise. Hao Yue lit up like a festival. He got 2. He was proud of 2. They're genuinely hard to kill. With his divine king fists, moon rising over the sea behind him, the whole heroic panorama. Then I clapped. 1 clap, void seal. Every red thing in the cave system became a layer of archaeology. Hao Yue stood in the sudden silence, fists still raised, moon vision still glowing, absolutely nothing left to punch. He turned to me with the expression of a man whose birthday party has been cancelled by weather and said, with real grief, "You couldn't have mentioned you could do that?" The contest was ruled a forfeit in my favor. The chaperone act was retired. He sulked for 1 corridor, then spent the next 3 asking me to do the clap again for his cousins back home. The tomb door itself was a wall of light with an entrance exam. Comprehend the first layer of the nameless emperor's scripture, displayed in floating text so dense it made saints nosebleed. First to pass enters alone. The crowd sat down for a siege. Histories said 10 days for a genius. Manhwa settled in with the smug calm of someone who knew the record was 10 days and knew who'd held it. I went in before dinner. I want to be modest about this, and there's no way to be. Half a day. The sage in my sea unfolded the emperor's meaning like a napkin. When the doors opened for me, several hundred people were still on paragraph 1, and my cousin was staring at me with an expression that had graduated, at last, from hard math to pure surrender. She told me later, much later, when all the secrets came out, that this was the exact moment she stopped checking my results against anything and just started enjoying the show. Inside, the tomb was 8 walls of the emperor's private syllabus, his forging art, his alchemy, his formations, each wall a masterclass, and one more thing, hanging in the dark heart of the chamber where the syllabus dead-ended. A coffin, black stone, wrapped in 9 bronze chains, each chain anchored to one of the 9 star fragments outside. The 9 dragons guarding the pearl was a prison, and the sarcophagus was the cell. Even my eyes couldn't see through the lid, and my eyes see through everything now. Whatever pressure sealed that box was calibrated far above emperor grade. As I watched, a shadow moved behind me with no owner. The tomb's voice, the nameless emperor's own soul echo, dry as old paper, said only, "Ignore it, it cannot get out. Study." So I studied. 4 days for all 8 walls, sage humming, and at the end, the true legacy floated down. A divine source holding the emperor's complete scripture, all 9 layers, recorded not as text, but as his own voice teaching, patient, vast, line by line, the closest thing to sitting at a god's knee this universe still offered. I didn't open it. I had a better use for scripture than reading it, and her name was waiting outside, a reincarnated immortal whose sealed memories needed exactly this grade of key. Instead, I did the thing that changed everything after. I opened the returns from Ryu's cauldron, the complete emperor weapon materials, poured in the Xuanhuang mother chi, laid out the forging art from wall number 3, and did the single most illegal thing a Dao realm cultivator can do. I forged an imperial weapon. Inside an emperor's own tomb, on his own geomantic throne, with the origin clay of the universe as flux and my sea's unreadable black script crawling into the metal on its own initiative, uninvited, like cats moving into a new house. It took a month and a half. What came out of my spirit sea at the end was a bell, golden, a foot tall at rest, 9 dragons coiled on its shoulders, alive in the metal. When it left my sea and rose through the tomb's roof to announce itself, and it insisted, "You don't stop a newborn emperor weapon from crying." It stood 90,000 miles tall in the outer void, 9 god dragons swimming its circumference, tolling a note that rolled through the entire realm and out the other side into the ordinary sky of the whole domain, where every race on the planet fell on its face. The elders outside had a theology emergency, a second supreme bell in the nameless emperor's tomb, a hidden co-burial, an unknown sovereign. Sects claimed it, clans claimed it. The Dangxia Pavilion claimed it on the grounds that it had dragons on it, and their founder once punched a dragon, which is the kind of logic you get from a sect whose signature move is a fist named after the victim. My family, no exception. I felt it happen through the tomb walls before I saw it, the specific texture of 10,000 people kneeling at once, which I have gotten good at identifying to my ongoing dismay. Ancestor Kai, quasi-emperor, second life, coolest head in the domain, looked up at my bell with tears in his young new eyes and bowed to it. Deep, formal, from the waist. My father, beside him, nearly knelt. The 9 dragons' great emperor, they called it, and led 10,000 people in reverence to a bell their own boy had cast 6 hours earlier. I want to describe the feeling of standing inside a sealed tomb, listening to your own grandfather worship your homework, because it is a specific and previously unmapped emotion. I had cast the thing in a fever of forging art and origin clay and cats moving into metal, and I hadn't stopped to consider that when a newborn imperial weapon cries, the whole sky answers. I couldn't reach them to explain. I couldn't muffle the bell. You don't gag an infant on its birthday. So I just stood there with the black script cooling on the metal, listening to a domain fall on its face, mouthing to no one, "It's me. It's just me. Please get up." They did not get up. They composed poetry. Hold that image. It gets worse for them. I promise it gets so much worse, because inside the tomb, the coffin had noticed. The thing in the coffin was the Changge heavenly emperor, the primordial god king whose dragon guard I'd been spanking around a meadow earlier, and my little forging project had been conducted, it turned out, on his geomantic throne. I'd strip-mined the luck of his prison to bless my bell. From his perspective, a squatter had cast a masterpiece in his living room, using his own feng shui as firewood. He objected. The chains sang, the coffin heaved, and a voice with the mass of a dead age promised to pay tribute to his long confinement with the blood of millions, starting with me. Then his sword came out, not through the lid, through the seal, the Changsheng heaven blade. his supreme emperor weapon, quasi-immortal grade, called from wherever dead kings keep their luggage. It rose over the outer void, 10,000 feet of edge burning with phoenix fire, and the nameless emperor's own bell, the black one, the tomb's warden, flew up to meet it. Two supreme weapons of two dead sovereigns dueled above the realm while every living thing beneath forgot how lungs work, and the warden was losing. Cracks crawled up the black bell with a sound like history splitting. The blade was simply better. Reforged in heaven's own war, the old records said later. And when the warden's spirit faltered, the tomb's dry voice found me with two words that contained an entire emergency. Open your soul. Letting an unknown dead emperor's power possess you is, as a rule, how horror stories start. But the alternative was that blade finishing the bell and starting on the audience. I opened. What poured in wasn't possession. It was alone. The nameless emperor's soul echo routed a thread of true imperial power through my body, a mortal frame carrying, for a few seconds, the output of history's strongest human, and pointed me at my own newborn bell like a man handing a child the keys to a siege engine. His instruction was one word: ring it. I rang it. The nine-dragon emperor bell met the Changge heaven blade with an emperor's power behind it, and the duel that had been slowly killing the warden ended in one stroke. The blade shattered. The audience watched a quasi-immortal weapon break like a dropped icicle, and my bell's nine dragons did something nobody scripted. They lunged into the wreckage and ate the blade's dying spirit, gulping down 10 epochs of weapon soul like cranes at a koi pond. The coffin went very, very quiet, the kind of quiet that files paperwork for a rematch. And out of my bell stepped a little girl, 5 years old, maybe 6, in a pink dress glowing faintly, the bell's newborn weapon spirit, force-grown on a diet of imperial soul, blinking up at me with eyes that held 9 dragons worth of pedigree and 0 adult supervision. Her first words: "Master, you haven't given me a name." I named her Xiaolong Nu on the spot. She approved. She was very solemn about approving. Then she yawned, toddled back into the bell to digest an era's worth of stolen weapon soul, and left me standing in a dead emperor's tomb, having apparently become a father to a bronze instrument. The nameless emperor's echo had one more gift in him before the tomb closed: a beam of light to the forehead, his full life, first person. Born the strongest holy body in human history, and then, at the height of youth, deliberately severing his own foundation to rebuild every realm from zero, twice as slow and 10 times as solid, because talent builds towers and only foundations hold them. That was the secret of history's strongest man. He was history's most patient one. The beam ended with a technique, Tao Foundation Retrospection, the art of rebuilding your earliest realms without losing your current ones, and a single dry sentence of parting advice about the road to immortality being paved with the bones of the impatient. I spent the rest of the realm's calendar doing exactly what the dead man said, rebuilt my first 4 realms from the studs. It felt like repaving a road while driving on it, and when it was done, my spirit sea had quintupled. The golden dragon in it had gone from phantom to flesh, and the whole engine ran with a silence that scared me more than noise ever had. Then the realm spat us all out, blinking, into the ordinary sky of the northern region, where my family was waiting, and where Ancestor Kai greeted me with shining eyes and the immortal words: "You missed it." A duel of 3 dead emperors. The 9 dragons. Great Emperor's bell devoured the heaven blade itself. I bowed to it personally. I stood there weighing my options. Behind him, my father nodded along, misty with reverence for the mysterious sovereign. I let them have the drive home. Some news you deliver sitting down. We delivered it in the family hall, doors sealed, elders assembled. I put the bell on the table. Ancestor Kai's face went through recognition, denial, recalculation, and a very specific shade of gray. My father asked, in a small voice, when the ancient 9 dragons' great emperor had forged his divine weapon. I said about 6 hours before you bowed to it. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then Ancestor Kai, quasi-emperor of the second life, terror of his generation, stood up straight, smoothed his robes, and announced with tremendous dignity, "I am never kneeling to anything again. Remember that vow." The universe certainly did. The clan locked the secret behind a 3-generation gag order. My mother declared that shame was for families with less impressive sons, and the banquet that followed lasted until the lamps gave out. Somewhere in the middle of it, Changge found me on a terrace with the winter sky doing its best work overhead, and I gave her the Emperor's true legacy, the divine source with his voice in it, the key to her sealed lifetimes, and watched the coldest face in the domain do something complicated and quiet with its composure. She said, "You keep giving away things kingdoms would burn for." I said, "Kingdoms don't sit on my terrace." The system rang its shop bell, 10,000-fold. Into my sea dropped the Immortal King burial god technique, and a broken bronze compass that would, within days, drag my mind across 100 million years and introduce me to the two most dangerous women above the sky. But that night, I let it lie. That night was lamps, family, a bell daughter humming in my chest, and a fiancé demonstrating to three elders with escalating hand gestures exactly how the crater had looked after each time the big rude giant refused to stay down. "Make me stand up," Ryu roared in her best landslide voice, and the table wept into its wine. "Some treasures don't come with a multiplier. You bank them anyway." The bronze compass got its turn a week later, in seclusion, and I want to describe what happened carefully, because it's the deepest water in this whole story. The compass pulled my mind out of my body and into a foreign universe, a private cosmos folded inside the legacy, where time ran so compressed that 10 days outside gave me 100 million years inside. I spent those eons watching one star. The star was pregnant. Something was growing inside it, feeding, and to feed it, the star went supernova and ATE. Planets, fleets, civilizations, whole shining history snuffed and funneled into the embryo like grain into a hopper. Billions of lives as formula milk. The embryo spoke to me, called me an ant, mentioned conversationally that entire universes were doodles of its Tao. And a voice in me that I trusted more than my own pulse said, "Whatever this hatches into, it must not hatch." So I picked a fight with an unborn god. I spent 30,000 compressed years learning to fight it, sitting against the primordial Tao trace of that universe's origin while it sanded my soul with pain until my spirit came out the far side hard enough to embarrass saints. And out of that grinding, I built one technique, my first original, the Immortal King Burial God Fist, a punch made of borrowed cosmic law and personal spite. It wasn't enough. The embryo pulled its trump card. It called a stone tablet. Black. Vast past metaphor. A monument bigger than starfields, sliding in from the cold edge of everything, and the instant it arrived, my punch stopped like a bird hitting a window. Worse, the thing reflected into the real sky over the real world, and every being in the 3,000 Tao domains fell on its face while three reincarnated somebodies, a certain winter maiden among them, woke screaming fragments of the same memory, the burial god tablet that eats immortal kings. I was losing, and then the universe's most beautiful deus ex machina occurred, a green willow leaf drifted across that dead cosmos, unfolded into a tree vast enough to canopy galaxies, and a woman's voice, amused, ancient, kind, the way weather is kind, said words I still turn over at night. A mortal body, an immortal bone, immortal eyes, unique across all time. I'll lend you a hand, and await your return in ascension. Golden light filled my borrowed fist, the tablet went spinning back into the dark, and the embryo died mid-threat with a name on its lips. Willow deity. Do you know the consequences? Which answered exactly none of my questions and upgraded all of them. I came out of the compass with a law-grade fist, a soul like forged iron, and the attention of at least one gardening-themed divinity. Only later, much later, from a very talkative dog we haven't met yet, did I get the shape of what had actually happened. Two immortal kings above the sky, the willow and a woman in a bronze mask, had both clocked my existence, compared notes, argued about whether I was some impossible Tao-level reincarnation, agreed to stop spying on me, and then, this is verbatim, per the dog, agreed that promising to spy less still rounds to spying. The heavens have an HR department, and it gossips. Meanwhile, the real world hung its final scoreboard. Thunder split the sky, and the Feather Ascension golden list descended, 12 god phantoms chanting, 300 golden steles falling onto 300 outpost worlds, and every teleportation array of the ancient starry sky road lit up for the first time in an age. The Emperor Road was open. Somewhere at its far end waited the Emperor Ruin's burial sea, where this era's crop of emperors would be decided, and every monster of every generation, thawed freaks, reincarnated sovereigns, my two Beidou pen pals Xiao Ran and Wang Cheng, was already lacing up. The family threw us a departure worthy of a coronation. My parents held it together right up until they didn't. My father's last words were about honor. My mother's were about eating properly. Ancestor Kai's were, last one to the Stargate is immortal because he was coming too. Quasi-emperor's race for the emperor fruit as well, and his second life had a second wind. My last words, for the record, over my shoulder, with the whole clan watching. Wait for my return as emperor. Cost nothing. Landed like a bell. Rhetoric is free, which makes it the only thing in my life with a worse multiplier than the systems. I'll be honest about that moment because I've been honest about the rest. I meant it, and I also had no idea what I was signing up for. I'd read the old novel. I knew the Emperor rode 8 generations the way the Shituo River 8 warships. I knew that somewhere past the Stargate waited a burial sea full of people exactly as hungry as me, and that the version of events in my memory did not have a single happy ending in it. Not for the villain, and not for most of the heroes either. I stood in my own front gate with my mother telling me to eat properly, and my father telling me about honor, and I made a promise to come home as a god to people who had every statistical reason to be burying me instead. And then I did the thing I always do when the numbers say I should be afraid. I looked at the numbers, and I looked at the 4 women loading onto my warship, and I decided the numbers had never once met me. The road had folklore about me already. The road hadn't seen anything yet. The Stargate squatted at the edge of our galaxy like a whirlpool of stars, a month's flight out. A month I spent running the Tao Foundation retrospection to completion, while Ancestor Kai shoveled spirit stones at the girls like a rich uncle at a festival. And at the gate itself, the Emperor Road introduced its pricing model. The gate was locked by a relic called the Guikshu Fire Seed, a lamp on an altar surrounded by a carpet of ancient human skins, and the lamp's activation fee, stamped into every arriving mind, was 9 young lives, sacrificed. That was the toll. The road to godhood opens on a down payment of children. Every guardian and prodigy at that gate stood in a silence you could mine. And then a divine son named Ming Yu, first ranked of the Nether Sea, spirit vortex physique, protected by a top-shelf quasi-emperor and raised on the personality that produces, solved the moral problem by embracing it. He snatched the fire seed, threw up his thunder formation, and started feeding the lamp with bystanders. 9 kids died screaming before their guardians, locked outside the gate's barrier. That was the trap of it, could do anything but howl. Then, flush with success, he looked across the crowd at Li Yue, my snow-haired swordswoman, and offered her the fire seed as a courting gift. Her answer was 1 syllable and is not printable in front of elders. So he declared that in that case, none of us were crossing, ever. I stepped out onto the air. He recognized me. Everyone recognizes me by this point, and had time to say most of a sentence about his ranking. My fist arrived before the verb did. The crowd, 10,000 strong, watched the Nether Sea's finest cease as an organized system, and his escaping soul wisp met my eyes on the way out. His quasi-emperor guardian lunged across the sky to avenge him, and got intercepted mid-lunge by a young-faced monster in Gu family colors who had been waiting all month for someone to try him. The old ancestors' fight lasted as long as it took to chase the man beyond the horizon. When Kai strolled back, adjusting his sleeves, somebody asked what happened to the Nether Sea's quasi-emperor. Dead, said my ancestor pleasantly, in the tone other people use for errands. And then to me, get the lamp, brat. We're burning daylight. The fire seed, for the record, went to manhwa, and the system's return on it was a black flame called the Guikshu Divine Fire, one of 9 chaos fires scattered across all existence, with a bonus. Inside the flame, a skeleton of some dead immortal emperor endlessly rehearsed the birth and death of universes, an incomplete scripture the fire promised to complete if I ever collected the full set of 9, a collectathon, across all reality, for an emperor's Bible. The system had learned to do sequels. The gate opened on the sacrifice already paid by a dead man's cruelty, which is the only kind of discount that road offers. Beyond it, a river of starlight and blood, wide as a sky, littered with the floating dead of every generation before ours. Ancestor Kai looked at the crossing, then at us, and delivered the send-off of the whole era. This is your age, it's also mine. See you all at the burial sea. Nobody dies. Then he stepped through, and the light took him, and the 4 women and I stood at the shore of the road that eats generations. Ruyu took my hand. Li Yue took position on my left. Changge on my right, manhwa ahead. She always walked ahead on roads she wouldn't explain how she knew. We stepped in. The road's first station was a river called Shituo, and I will describe it exactly as it presented itself. A channel of blood and starlight, 10,000 feet wide, flowing through absolute void, carrying the perfectly preserved corpses of 100 generations of people exactly like us. We stood on an island in the middle of it, a few thousand of the domain's finest, and the river's rules settled onto everyone's minds like frost. No flying, no void steps, no warships. A squad of geniuses tested that immediately, and the river's coffins rose from the depths, packed the fallen into black boxes with the courtesy of undertakers, and floated them downstream into forever. So, a river you can't fly over, can't sail, can't swim, in a story where the only way forward is across. The solution was discovered by a silver-haired boy who found his senior sister's corpse floating past. The dead of the Shituo don't sink and don't rot. They float like driftwood. He wept over her, made her a promise about carrying her to the emperor's throne, laid her back on the water, and stepped aboard. The corpse bore his weight like a canoe, necro-navigation. The crowd's horror lasted about 9 seconds before ambition digested it, and then the whole shore of the era's brightest minds began politely commandeering the floating dead. 2 footnotes the pioneers learned in transit. 1. Stand on any corpse too long and its resentment climbs your legs. The silver-haired trailblazer sprouted a coral growth shaped like his senior sister's smiling face on his neck before he learned to hop boats. The dead here resent the living the way rivers resent bridges. 2. And this one's mine. My eyes could see the resentments directly, thick under the water like eels in a barrel. So while the flotilla of geniuses leapfrogged downstream from corpse to corpse, shrieking at every coral face, I found the single biggest corpse in the river, an alien titan 100 feet long, evicted its resentment with one soul punch, and pulled my entire household downstream on a private yacht while the rest of the road watched with expressions I want embroidered somewhere. The river's toll booth was a reef shaped like a Buddha, black, decayed, smiling wrong, where the current died in a whirlpool of hungry sound, and everyone had to disembark and wait. It's also where the road's other traffic caught up with us, and where the Nether Sea survivors, still sore about their divine son becoming weather at the Stargate, decided honor demanded a formal challenge. Their third-ranked champion called out our delegation, and specifically, with the unerring instinct of a man selecting the wrong door on a game show, aimed his challenge at the smallest of us. Ryu stepped up with her hands on her hips. I need to explain what my fiancé had become by this river, because the world kept making the same mistake and I'd stopped correcting it in advance. The completed yin-yang divine body wasn't a talent anymore, it was a jurisdiction. When the Nether Sea's finest opened with his sex sin Buddha arts, she answered with a moon-cold palm the size of the sky. When he escalated, she stacked her reincarnation formation. And when he summoned his guardian beast and the crowd started composing her eulogy, my girl hit her ceiling, went through it, and had an epiphany live on stage. A second formation bloomed inside her first, the great Luo yin-yang array. Her hair went half white, her eyes went full yin-yang fish, and out of a black and white gate behind her walked a judge, 1,000 feet of magistrate, face half day, half night, carrying a stone coffin on one shoulder like a workman's ladder. It spoke with her voice underneath its own, and what it said entered the road's permanent folklore. All the heavens are straw dogs. Yin and yang decide life and death. Into my coffin, wicked beast. The coffin lid opened. The guardian beast, a thunderhound the size of a hill, went in like bathwater down a drain. The lid shut. The challenge ended on procedural grounds, specifically the procedure of burial, and the Nether Sea delegation developed an urgent interest in other rivers. My tiny fiancé dusted her hands, hopped down, and asked if anyone else had opinions about her family. The reef did not have opinions. The reef had learned. The limitless Tao domain had not. Their contingent arrived at the reef a day later, led by their own first-ranked, a walking monument named Yan Kun, ancient overlord body, whose culture's proverb was better to contend with heaven than with Yan Kun, and backed by 2 guardian quasi-emperor souls riding their descendants' talismans. And when the reef's bottleneck packed 100 factions onto one rock, the limitless crowd did the math that crowds always do around me. He's one person, we are many, treasure is finite. They proposed, loudly, a joint operation to kill me and redistribute my luggage. I told them what I tell everyone. You may all come at once, and I encourage it because I have somewhere to be. They came at once. I used one palm. The 3000 world honored one void palm. The upgrade I'd built from 2 emperors' palm arts turns one strike into a sky of strikes. The reef vanished under golden handprints the way a valley vanishes under weather. When it cleared, the joint operation had been reduced to its junior partners. Several hundred storage bags were ownerless, and the 2 quasi-emperor guardian souls hung in the air with their descendants' talismans smoking, recalculating their whole afternoon. They chose escalation. In fairness to them, they didn't know. They wove a soul-burning array over the whole reef, a net to cook every mind on it, mine and the bystanders both, and erase the witnesses along with the target. A pair of near emperors, spending a generation of their own faction's children as camouflage. My spirit had been forged for 30,000 years against the origin of a universe. Their net settled over it and melted like snow on a stove. Then I stood up into the sky and showed 2 dead men's souls what the fist I built in that universe does. The first quasi-emperor soul broke on the third exchange. The second tried to flee into his descendant's talisman, and my eyes followed him in. Result and reaction. The reef was suddenly very quiet. Several hundred young geniuses were suddenly very orphaned of bad guardianship, and the road's folklore acquired verse 2, do not bid on the man from central heaven. In the loot, among the saint weapons and king weapons of the fallen ambitious, was a sword of the 9th saint grade, blue as deep ice. I gave it to Li Yue, whose old king blade had been outclassed by her new arts for a month. The system considered the gift. The system approved a 10,000-fold. What came back was the Moon Emperor Heavenly Frost Sword, a low-grade imperial weapon, a 3-foot icicle of moonlight with an Emperor's Frost Dao braided down the fuller. My maid, my quiet snow-haired maid who joined me with one bag and a bow, now walked around with a weapon that outranked the treasuries of Holy Lands. She cried, briefly, elegantly, while pretending not to. Ryu hugged her. Changge pretended to examine the horizon. Manhwa smiled the private smile of a woman whose impossible file on me had long since stopped accepting new entries. And under the river, something enormous, black, and extremely food-motivated had begun paying attention to the surface commotion. The reef's whirlpool was about to introduce me to the best worst pet in the universe. First, though, the whirlpool needed unclogging, and the fortunes had already told me what lived at the bottom of it, a king-level river demon commanding every screaming thing in the water. As long as it rained, the reef stayed a dead end. So I did the thing that added a chapter to my legend and years to my ancestors' blood pressure. I told the girls to wait and jumped into the river of blood. The surface reaction, I'm told, was operatic. To the assembled factions, this was suicide. The water dissolves the living, full stop, and the reef spent the next hours composing memorial couplets. Yan-kun of the Limitless, sensing a vacancy at the top of the road, seized the moment. He squared up before Changge, announced that the late Lin Yuan's companions required new management, and offered her a choice between his ship and his displeasure. Changge's response deserves its own monument. She didn't summon her imperial gifts. She wanted the workout. Overlord body. First forbidden tribulation. Second tribulation. Blood spears across the sky. And she went through all of it with 2 fingers and a sword art from a previous life, then hit him with a sound. The Guanghan Heavenly Melody, a soul attack disguised as music, a single cold phrase of it, and the unconquerable Yan-kun, third tribulation half-formed, folded up mid-boast, and spent his emergency escape talisman to flee. Except, the talisman, purchased for battlefields with ground, dropped him into the only terrain available, the river. Better to contend with heaven than with Yan-kun, went the proverb. Heaven, apparently, subcontracts. Down below, meanwhile, I was making a friend. The riverbed was a drowned cathedral, a golden Buddha 10,000 feet tall nailed to the bottom by a bronze spike, one of 12 such statues anchoring the whole river, and prowling around it, the king. A black fish the size of a fleet, all mouth and appetite, hiding behind a defensive array woven by a dead Buddha's remnant soul, very smug about the array. My bell rang the array apart in 3 strokes. The fish then made the classic mistake of this entire road. It monologued about being a king of the second heaven, while something older than kings wound up behind my soul. I will summarize the negotiation. My spirit, hammered for 30 millennia against a universe's origin, expressed itself upon the fish approximately 1,000 consecutive times. The fish's positions evolved as follows. You dare. Ow. I am a king. Ow. Mercy. Ow. Name your terms. Ow. I accept servitude. Master, please. I named it Great Black Fish because it was a great blackfish, and I'd used up my naming budget on the Bell Daughter. It accepted the name with the sulky grace of a duke demoted to doorman, sealed the contract with a soul strand, and 1 soul-mending pill later, because I look after my employees, became the fastest, chattiest, hungriest mount on the Emperor Road. Its first act of service, reporting another human on the riverbed, we arrived to find Yan-kun alive, thriving, and mid-heist. The man had landed next to the golden Buddha, healed up, and pried loose a rosary of blood river beads that granted free passage through the water. He saw me, made a short speech about settling accounts later, and fled at the speed of light. The fish looked at me. I looked at the fish. I said, fetch. There are sights the road never forgets. The unconquerable Yan-kun, proverb and all, pursued across the blood-red sky at wave height by a mouth the size of a canyon, gaining. He threw his third tribulation at it. The mouth ate the tribulation. He threw a mountain-splitting fist. The mouth ate the concept. And then, in full view of the reef, the proverb ended. Better to contend with heaven than with Yan-kun, but better than both, apparently, is a motivated fish. It surfaced, burped, and announced to the entire silent, traumatized reef that overlord bodies were delicious and it might break through a whole realm off the nutrition. Then it spat out his storage bag and rosary at my feet like a retriever presenting a duck, wearing the smile of an employee expecting a bonus. Inside the bag, along with a career of stolen valor, a lump of pale jade radiance called the Nirvana Buddha Fat, an emperor-grade treasure for elevating one's inner visions. Emperor-grade treasure, bound fiancé. You know the drill by now, and so did the system. I passed it to Ryu for her judge, and the 10,000-fold return dropped an immortal marrow jade embryo into my immortal rank nourishment for a weapon spirit. My bell daughter claimed it before I finished reading the description, argued her case like a barrister. I am your lifelong weapon master. Feed the bell, it's just logical, and vanished into her bronze home with the prize. When she reappeared days later, the toddler was gone. A solemn girl of about 15 stood on the bell's rim, radiating the composure of a very small empress. They grow up so fast when you feed them dead emperor's souls and immortal jade. The rest of the crossing was a pleasure cruise on a nightmare. The fish knew every treasure on the riverbed. It had spent millennia licking things it couldn't eat. Its words, "I'm not unpacking that," and ferried us from cache to cache while it gossiped about the river's history. The water was an ancient god-spilled mind. The 12 Buddha statues were a prison foundation older than the road, and something about the statues made the fish deeply, personally hungry, which was every prophecy I needed. At the river's end, a void rift that swallowed the current, corpses and all, at the shore of a land built entirely of the drowned dead, I broke the fish's contract seal and let it go. It floated there a long moment, thrown, asked why. I told it the truth. I don't keep kings on leashes, I invest in them. It said, and the human grin on that canyon mouth is a thing I'll carry. Become an emperor first, and come find me. I licked through a Buddha and saw something under this river. When you're ready, I'll make it worth your while. Then it was gone into the blood, and we stood at the border of the next horror on the itinerary, and Ryu summarized the entire arc of the Shituo River in one sentence, hands on hips, with the judge nodding along behind her. Everyone we meet either kneels, gets buried, or gets eaten. This road is very well organized. The Corpse Land Buddha Cave is exactly what it says on the label, and the label should be illegal. A continent-sized shore built from the bodies of every prodigy the river ever drank, packed in layers, faces up and rising out of that pavement of the dead. 1,000,000 Buddha statues tall as mountains, in every posture of serenity. Half of them smiled. In context, the smiling was worse. The whole place was a maze array keyed to your sanity. Walk it unshielded, and the statues rearranged behind your eyes until you laugh yourself to stone. We watched it happen to the poor souls who'd arrived before us. Geniuses hugging corpses they mistook for mothers, geniuses attacking statues, and the statues' response protocol, which was the real horror. One splash of spilled blood, and a statue's stone skin flaked away to reveal the thing beneath. A demon Buddha, 10,000 feet of half-black, half-gold divinity with a smile like a bad debt, whose casual palm erased dozens of the era's finest per swing. Everyone screamed for me by name, which has become the road's emergency protocol. But here's the strange true thing that happened in that cave, and why I think about it still. I'd just finished refining the Gikshu Divine Fire, the chaos flame from the Stargate, and the refinement pushed my immortal bones awakening over a threshold. The immortal light that came off me in that moment wasn't an attack, it was just presence, weather from a higher sky. And the demon Buddha stopped mid-massacre. The black half of him, the demon half, cringed away from the light like a stain from bleach, and the gold half woke up. A being that had spent an eon as a coin flip between saint and monster got, for one moment, a thumb on the scale. The gold won. The demon burned out of him in front of the whole cave. What remained was a true golden Buddha, ancient and grieving, who looked at the carpet of dead, his own harvest, gathered across ages by the demon wearing his body, and pronounced sentence on himself. Amitabha, he said, my sin. And he lit his own karma fire and burned 10,000 feet of gold folding down into ash and prayer, while a cave full of killers stood in actual silence. He left me his cushion, his prayer mat, the Brahma crossing platform, emperor grade, a comprehension amplifier soaked in an era of penance. And his freed soul drifted out over the river, down to the drowned Buddha my fish had been licking, and moved into a stone on its brow to begin again, which means somewhere under that blood, there is now a monk in a rock arguing theology with a fish. This universe's afterlife has roommates. The cushion went to Changge. She'd been decoding her past lives one memory at a time, and a comprehension throne was exactly her size. The 10,000-fold return was the Tai Shu Forget platform, immortal rank, and reading its functions out loud actually changed the temperature of my future plans. Function 1. Sit on it and enter. Total forgetting. 1 outside day equals 100 years of thought. Function 2, and I had to read it twice. It converts into an emperor-slaying platform. Feed it a saint-grade weapon, and it releases 1 strike of a saint. Feed it an emperor-grade treasure, and it releases the strike of an emperor. I had 25 saint weapons in my bag from the reef. I had just become immortal walking around with 25 cans of saint. The cave's exit ran on a schedule. A blood moon rising over the statue field would open a well of rebirth, the way forward, and until it rose, the land ran its nightly programming of maze song and madness. We dug in. And with the time bought, Manhwa finished the project she'd been quietly running since the Emperor's tomb. She refined the Gikshu fire seed to completion, and her second supreme bone bloomed. The heavens threw a vision for it, an empress phantom over the whole land, looking down through time, and every genius in the cave stood up in their camps to stare. One supreme bone is a dynasty's dream. My cousin now ran too, an arrangement with no precedent in any record anyone could name, and when the vision faded she turned to me with the second bone still glowing through her robes and said, with the delivery of a woman ordering tea, "Now I can keep up with you, approximately. From anyone else it's flattery, from her it was a scheduling estimate. The blood moon rose on schedule, and with it, through the void rifts, came the late arrivals, hundreds of fresh prodigies from other branches of the road, dropping into our haunted shore, led by a pair whose auras I disliked in a way my bones filed under ancestral. Shutian and Shumei, brother and sister, first and second of the Kangshuan domain, joint practitioners of an underworld emperor scripture, radiating the moist cold of a basement with a history. The brother walked like a man reviewing property. The sister looked at Meihua's face and said, publicly, conversationally, that she'd enjoy peeling it off to use as a meditation mat. Every camp on that shore went quiet and started discreetly moving valuables, but it was Meihua's reaction that told me the real story. My cousin, cold, precise, twice-boned Manhwa, looked at these two strangers with an expression I'd never seen on her. Recognition. Old, banked, patient hatred, the kind you don't earn in one lifetime. She said evenly, "I'm going to kill you both." The brother asked why. "No reason," said my cousin, in the tone of a woman with 800 reasons filed somewhere private, whatever lifetime she'd known them in, and by now I'd stopped pretending I didn't understand what her impossible files meant. The invoice had come due tonight, under a blood moon, on a shore made of the dead. I stepped back and gave her the floor. Family invoices are sacred. Before the invoice could be paid, the land threw its scheduled tantrum. The blood moon's rise reversed the river. Black water flooded the whole shore knee-deep. Resentment swam in it, grabbing ankles. Corpses sat up wearing borrowed grudges, and in the chaos, a stray blast shattered one of the million statues. Out of the broken stone rolled a golden relic, a sacred sarira condensed from an age of a Buddha suppressing his own demon, and the entire shore's worth of newly arrived prodigies looked at it with one shared expression. I collected it at a walk, then I turned to face the freshly arrived 100-odd factions who didn't yet know the road's folklore, held up the relic, and asked my standard customs question. Any objections? The new arrivals had objections. The new arrivals organized, genuinely fast, credit to them, into a joint interception force of about 100 elite talents, on the reasonable theory that no single person beats 100. One finger. The intercepting heaven finger, dressed in the black script of my wheel, coming down through the floodlight like the decision of a court. Where it landed, the joint interception force stopped being joint, then stopped being a force. The survivors' guardian souls burst out of talismans to retaliate, took one look at what was standing in the crater smiling at them, and departed at speeds that broke their own dignity barriers. One quasi-emperor wisp didn't leave fast enough. My finger caught it at the horizon. The road's folklore acquired verse 3, and verse 3 is just my name and a Dolga respectful silence. That was the stage the Yin siblings chose for their formal grudge match. You have to admire the confidence. It's the only thing about them you can admire. The fight was worth the wait. The brother went full mythology, Underworld King's avatar, Yaksha form, then a boat. An actual funeral barge of the underworld, the boat of the other shore, woven from 100,000 harvested souls, drifting over the battlefield with a lantern that promised passage to everyone it touched. The crowd despaired on schedule, and my cousin looked up at the great dark ship of the man she'd hated across lifetimes, raised one palm, and reminded the road why heaven only issues one supreme bone per era. Her first bone fired the heavenly hand, the sky itself coming down as a palm. Her second bone fired the new trick, the one the Emperor's marrow had matured, reincarnation. The art of making time disagree with you. The siblings aged backward mid-combo, combat prime unwound into apprenticeship. Their boat rotted forward 1,000 years in 10 seconds, and the funeral barge of the underworld came apart like wet paper in exactly the amount of time it takes an audience to inhale. The brother, in the finest tradition of his kind, screamed for his guardian. The Yin clan's quasi-emperor soul materialized in wrath and met my intercepting heaven finger, which had been waiting for him the way an umbrella waits by a door. Then the siblings met the sky palm, and the invoice was paid. The brother and sister who'd promised to wear my cousin's face went into the Yellow Springs with vermilion fire behind them to guarantee the receipt. Whatever they'd done to her in another life, she never gave me the details, and I never billed her for the ammunition. The account was closed on a shore made of the dead, and Manhwa stood over the outcome with two bones blazing and an expression of profound fiscal satisfaction. One postscript made it comedy. The brother's imperial weapon, a burial coffin nurtured by his clan's dead emperor for 40,000 years, survived its owner and came for me on autopilot, screaming down out of the floodlight with the mass of a falling fortress. I caught it, one hand, the way you catch a door someone slammed. The road watched a mortal hold a struggling imperial weapon at arm's length like a misbehaving cat, and I said the line even I knew was excessive. Come, let's play a funeral march on it. Then my bell rang the coffin apart in 2 strokes. My bell daughter ate its spirit as a light snack, her 3rd dead emperor's weapon, she keeps a list, and the moon emperor's sword in Li Yue's sheath got the leftovers, which triggered a return of Tai spirit marrow, which also went to my bell daughter, who by now regarded the entire road as a buffet arranged personally for her growth. She's not wrong. I've stopped arguing with the women in my life. The win rate doesn't justify the effort. The blood moon peaked. The rebirth well opened. A Buddha's head the size of a hill surfacing from the flood, mouth agape, throat spiraling down into a teleportation array, toll listed at 9 lives. You'll recall the road's pricing model. The crowd recalled it too, and started eyeing each other's juniors. I looked at the toll, decided I'd paid this road enough respect, and put my eyes on the Buddha head's demon half. Twin lines of gold. The black rot hissed off the stone, the Buddha's face went whole and golden, and the voice that came out of the throat said, "I swear on the bell." My heart grew demons. How embarrassing. Passage is free, and then opened wide for the entire shore. Free. For everyone. The road's most sacred rule. Everything costs children. Voided by hygiene. Several hundred strangers crossed through the Buddha's throat that night without paying a single life, and every one of them passed me on the way in with the careful reverence of people filing past an active volcano that had, inexplicably, paid their rent. On the far side waited the last stretch of void before the boundless sea, and drifting in formation, the strangest fellow travelers yet. But that's the next station. At this one, the ledger read, 2 ancient grudges settled, 1 relic banked, 1 Buddha rehabilitated, 1 coffin devoured, and 9 children not sacrificed, specifically because the road ran into someone it couldn't bill. The road hates me. Ryu says it's mutual, and I should stop smiling when I say it. I've kept the smile. It's earned. The next station introduced itself with a door policy and a poison. The no-return steely forest, 99,000 black monuments floating in a red mist, spanning a void sealed by 72 chains of chaos. One genius tested the ceiling by warship and was distributed evenly across the local weather. The rules stamped themselves into our minds on arrival. 9,900 of the steelies held marks. Comprehend a steely, earn its mark, and the mark tears you an exit. No mark, no exit. And the red mist, we'd learn on a deadline, was a slow venom called the heart-eating cocoon with a 15-day fuse. A library that kills slow readers. Somewhere, a librarian god was finally living their dream. For most, the forest was a desperate scramble. For me, it was a buffet with place cards. Each steely resonated with whatever you carried, physiques, weapons, techniques, and unlocked a dead master's legacy to the worthy. My sage fruit and forget platform chewed through them like a wood chipper through fan mail. 2 emperor-grade palm arts in the first days, folded straight into my own 3,000 world-honored 1 palm until 1 strike didn't just multiply, it organized. Marks piled up in my bag. I started handing them out to the household like theater tickets. But the forest's real event wasn't on a steely. It arrived on a warship, alone, and the entire station went quiet around her. Chin Lan. I'd heard the name in transit gossip. A girl who'd risen out of nowhere, crushed her domain's entire ranking list in single strikes, spoke to no one, traveled with no one. What the gossip missed, and my eyes could not, was what she was. Not a genius, a vessel, an innate chaos body wrapped around something enormous and folded, the way Changge's soul was folded, but deeper, and stranger, and sadder. She refused every faction's greeting on arrival, princes and beauties alike, with the same flat courtesy. Then she crossed the entire anchorage directly to my warship, stood in front of me, and studied my face the way you study a road sign in a language you used to speak, and then she said it, quietly, just for me. You are not him. You are just a similar flower. She turned to leave. I caught up, because you don't get to hand a man a sentence like that and exit. What followed, over tea on her warship, was the strangest origin story on a road built of them. She explained without drama, a Tao fruit, the planted seed of some immensely higher being, on her 8th reincarnation, walking the mortal world life after life, on a mission she only half remembered. Her memories fell away on a cycle, wiped and rewritten by forces upstream of her. She'd forgotten mountains, lifetimes, names. All that survived every wipe was a directive. Find him. A someone. A flower she'd know when she saw it, and I looked enough like the flower to make her cross a station full of kings. I hope I don't forget you, she said conversationally, the way other people discuss weather. Every time I wake, I lose things. I would prefer you weren't one of them. The system, with the timing of a shop bell in a cathedral, chose that exact moment to ping her as a binding target. Some acquisitions you make for the returns. This one I made because a girl who loses everything on a schedule deserved one thing on the ledger that argued back. The forest's finale belonged to Ryu in the way finales kept doing. Deep in the mist, my tiny fiancée found a stele the mist itself avoided, and her fingers on it triggered a legacy of a different class. A fragment of an emperor's law crystallized. Actual law. The physics of a sovereign. The thing you're not allowed to even see below sainthood. The stele's barrier slammed down around her. The fragment began to manifest, and every sense I owned informed me that Chin-lan, across the station, had turned toward that light like a compass needle finding north. It was hers. Whatever her mission was, that fragment was a piece of it. I could read it in her face like a headline. Ryu comprehended her stele, collected the fragment, walked out of the barrier, and handed it straight to me, unprompted, with the sunny logic that has governed her whole reign of terror. You gave me everything I have. Here's a law, don't spend it all at once. So I ran the family business. To Ryu went the heavenly Tao fate mark I'd pulled off my own prize stele, and the return on it was a true phoenix undying medicine, a third immortality herb, which took up residence in my sea and taught my resident dragon to fly formation with a firebird, upgrading every future punch of mine to a duet, and to Chin-lan, watching, braced, visibly resigned to bargaining for her own mission piece, I simply handed the Emperor's Law fragment. No price. Her composure cracked down the middle for exactly 1 second. And what looked out of the crack was so young and so tired and so grateful that I had to make a joke to survive it. The system's return on that gift outdid itself. The complete law. The full Tao pattern of the sovereign the fragment came from, a being called the Devouring Heaven Empress, the mightiest human woman in the history of everything, spooled into my sea like thread onto a bobbin. I spent 3 days engraving it onto my bell while my bell daughter supervised with proprietary satisfaction, and when it was done, my newborn imperial weapon carried the finished law of history's apex empress on its skin. Remember whose law it was? The masked woman above the sky certainly did. Deadline week, the forest paid out exits. My marks covered the whole household with spares. Li Yue's gifted mark returned as something rarer, an ultimate landmark, keyed not to the standard exit but to a sealed pocket of the road the steles only whispered about, and Chin-lan, packing to leave, showed me her own exit token, identical to mine. The only two on the station. She looked at the matching marks for a long moment, then at me. Fate, she said, does not usually repeat itself around me, it forgets to. Where we were both going, she already knew, and told me plainly, because she'd stopped being guarded with me somewhere between the T and the law, the platform of atonement, her mission. The place her 8th life had been aimed at like an arrow. An arrow, her tone made clear, that was not expected to come back. I smiled, told the girls to take the standard exit and wait for me at the next anchorage and pocketed my matching mark. Arrows fly straighter in pairs. Someone should have warned the target. The platform of atonement was an island in the void shaped like a cut gem. Flowers on the upper face, black fire underneath. The standard exits dropped everyone else topside into the meadows, where the flower's fragrance dissolved the forest's poison out of the blood. Our matching marks dropped Chin-lan and me underneath, into the fireside. Naturally, she landed first in a field of blooms at the border between the light and the dark, and I arrived in time to watch the worst thing on the whole road happen quietly, in a garden. She was standing among the flowers, saying something soft to them. There will always be one that's you, and I will never forget you. And then her eyes simply went out, like windows at dusk. The cycle had come for her memories again, mid-sentence, mid-mission, and the 8th life of Chin-lan folded up like a paper doll and dropped. I caught her before the flowers did. I'm going to try to skip what I did for the next 3 days, and then I'm going to fail because it turns out I want it on the record. I sat in a meadow at the edge of hell and held a stranger's hand. I ran the J secret on her, the healing art that mends flesh, soul, spirit see, karma, the Tao heart itself. And I found the one wound it doesn't touch. She wasn't broken. She wasn't cursed. She was erased, on a schedule, by something so far above me that my immortal bone couldn't get a grip on it and my immortal eyes couldn't see where the erased parts went. I have punched an unborn god. I have caught an emperor weapon bare-handed. I sat in that field completely, uselessly outmatched by a filing cabinet in the sky, and I learned what it feels like to own every power on the road and none of the ones that mattered right then. So I did the only thing left. I built a defensive array around the two of us, and I waited, and I cataloged, with great care, in a file I do not intend to lose, exactly how much I disliked whatever upstream hand kept reaching into this girl and taking pieces out. I am a patient man about most things. I made an exception, quietly, in a meadow, and set it aside for the day my hands can reach that high. They will. I've never yet run out of ladder. On the 3rd day she woke, looked around, looked at me, and here's the thing. Here's the whole thing. Her eyes focused, and she said my name. Lin Yuan. That's great, she said, with the small, stunned relief of someone checking their pockets after a robbery. I haven't forgotten him. Him, third person, to my face, before her manners rebooted. I've been paid in imperial weapons and immortality herbs, and none of it, write this down system, none of it cleared the ledger like that sentence. Then she stood, brushed off the petals, reassembled her calm-like armor, and briefed me on the mission she did remember, because the cycle always left the mission. Beneath the island was sealed the suppression prison ancient emperor, a titan of the underworld, beaten ages ago by the devouring heaven empress herself, too strong to kill. His body, a 9 lifetimes emperor's body, flesh iterated across 9 incarnations into something disgustingly close to indestructible. His soul, a wisp of true immortal grade will that mortal world power categorically cannot destroy, only suppress era after era by a seal that required maintenance. She was the maintenance. Her bloodline of lifetimes existed in part to walk down into that dark every incarnation and tighten the bolts. This time, the bolts were stripped. A third of the seal chains had already snapped. He was awake. We went down together, past a Styx of black water that ate flying things, past fields of corpse flowers that turned to wraiths when bruised, and my rose gold engineering habits and her inherited maps made a good marriage of it, to the tomb at the bottom, a pyramid of black starstone wound in 108 chains, anchored by 9 dim star cores, with her inheritance sitting at the center of the seal like a keystone. The devouring heaven jar, the Empress's own supreme imperial weapon, left behind as a prison lock, and from inside the cracked coffin at the heart of it, a voice like a flooded mind said, "The Empress's little seed has come again, and brought a snack. I want the record to show Qinlan did everything right." She fed her recovered law fragment into the seal. She woke the jar. She fought the reawakening like 8 lifetimes of professionals. But the schedule was against her. The Emperor had been chewing his chains for an era, and mid-ritual, the coffin simply opened, and out stood the whole problem. A 9 lifetimes body, wearing its wisp of unkillable soul, stretching for the first time in an age, monologuing about tribute in blood. He got 2 sentences in. I'd heard enough monologues this road. The fight, if we're being honest with the word, went like this. His opening move, a devouring maw of underworld force meant to drink my lifespan, broke on my astral key like surf on a cliff. My opening move was the bell. He caught it with both palms, the way he doubtless caught mountains and armies, and discovered that the black script engraved on it was the devouring heaven empress's own law, the exact law that had beaten him into that coffin, now stamped on an imperial weapon and swung by a mortal. His palms sizzled, his eyes did the arithmetic, his composure left for a better position. "Too hot to eat," he bellowed, an ancient god king shaking scalded hands, and that was the moment the fear changed sides. I hit him with the Immortal King burial god fist, dressed in the Immortal King Dharma, amplified through the bell. 3 times. The first broke his guard. The second broke the 9 lifetimes body, flesh 9 incarnations deep, cracked like a dropped jar, golden blood hissing on black stone. The third broke the thing that mortal power supposedly cannot touch, the immortal wisp itself, pinned wriggling on the light of my eyes, learning about vermilion fire. The rules say a 9 lifetime soul can't be destroyed short of a true immortal. The rules had not audited my bones recently. Far above every sky, in a place I'd visit only in consequences, the Emperor's true self, the ascended original, an immortal king of the underworld ranked among its giants, felt his mortal anchor die, and tried to reach down through the layers of reality to do something about it. He was intercepted en route by a sovereign called Immortal Emperor Tianhuang, an old enemy with a long memory, and sent home with his wrath unspent. I learned this later, from the gossip networks of heaven, which, I cannot stress this enough, exist, and are thriving. What settled over the battlefield afterward was quieter. The island's seal, its purpose consumed, dissolved into a teleportation gate for the crowds upstairs, the Emperor's shattered marrow condensed into a jewel of 9 lifetimes of Tao. It went to manhwa by courier fortune at our next reunion, matured her second bone years ahead of schedule, and returned to me as an immortal rank marrow that finished the transformation of my own eyes. The old records call the result the immaculate immortal pupil. It came with 2 new party tricks I'd get infinite use from. An innate light that scours evil, curses, and karma out of anything it touches, and a forbidden domain of 3,000 suns for guests who require structure. And Qinlan stood over the empty coffin of her 8 lifetime enemy, the errand done, the arrow landed, alive, which the arrow had not budgeted for, and looked at me with an expression that had given up on being unreadable. "My mission is complete," she said. "I don't know what I am now." "Free," I suggested. She thought about the word like it was in a foreign language. Then she said she would carry it to the burial sea and see how it fit. Her road bent away from mine here. The jar and the mission's last threads pulled her toward the endgame by another route. She stepped onto her warship, paused, and left me with the send-off that I have not, to date, recovered from. "I will not forget you." The time beside you was the happiest of my life, all 8 of them. Then she was light and gone, and I stood in a flower field over a dead god's prison, having absolutely no comedic response available. Some scenes you don't punch up. You just close the ledger gently and walk north. North was a dead planet called the Land of Buried Souls, where the road reunited me with my household and introduced its most personal hazard yet. The ghosts there were US. Every genius who'd ever died on this road, their resentments drawn down into the planet's core and composted for eras into things called demon shadow fiends, and the fiends chose targets by talent. The brighter you burned, the more of them came. It was the only station that scaled to its guests, which meant my camp was, effectively, ringing a dinner bell made of destiny. The girls held the yard for days, Changge and manhwa hunting in pairs, Li Yue's new moon sword carving shadows into weather, Ruyu's judge working double shifts with the coffin, while I sat in the middle finishing a refinement and, frankly, using my family as bait, because the fortunes had promised that enough dead geniuses would eventually summon the shift manager. It came on the 9th day, a void annihilation Rakshasa, a tower of ancient resentment that had once been somebody's era-defining prodigy. It arrived expecting a buffet. I stood up and opened the new eyes. The forbidden domain, 3,000 pillars of immortal light, dropped around a battlefield like the bars of a birdcage designed by a sun. Inside it, my innate light fell as rain. Fiends didn't fight it, they unhappened. Resentment scrubbed down to clean nothing, and the Rakshasa, pinned mid-lunge in a cage of noon, had time for exactly 1 sentence. You were waiting for me? Flattered by the surprise. Yes, always assume I've read ahead. It dropped a mark where it died, a Rakshasa seal, a key to somewhere the station didn't advertise, and the gift engine, fed the seal via Ruyu, returned something with a provenance that made even me sit down. An ancient tomb mark, forged personally by the nameless emperor, keyed to a burial site from the immortal ancient era, the age before ages, the basement of history. I told the girls to hold the camp, follow the fortunes to the next station if I ran long, and step through. The tomb was a cavern vast beyond sonar, lit by one ever-burning lamp, walls carved with the biographies of 2 separate ancient emperors, and I noticed, reading, that both biographies had the same recurring background character. Both god kings, ages apart, had kept the same enormous black dog, the same dog, across eras, in imperial frescoes. Wall 2 held the tomb's treasure, the Jade Z secret, the healing art of the fabled 9 secrets, sibling to my battle secret. 9 layers of it, flesh, soul, spirit sea, karma, and at the summit the repair of a damaged Tao heart itself, the one wound cultivation cannot otherwise cure. Owning 2 of the 9 secrets also meant each amplified the other, which my fists would be expressing in all future negotiations. I sat down to comprehend it, 6 days, sage humming, and the entire time I felt eyes on me. Greasy, calculating, deeply unspiritual eyes, from somewhere overhead in the dark. On day 6, I finished the 9th layer, stood, dusted off, and addressed the ceiling. Come down. I know you're up there. Silence. So I punched the suspended stone coffin I'd scoped on arrival, and out of it, yowling, in a tangle of limbs and outrage, fell the fresco dog. Big, black, talking, furious. You dare, it bellowed, influent human, scrambling upright with its dignity around its ankles. You stole my master's secret art and struck my coffin. Kneel, and this emperor may yet take you as a concubine. I want to preserve every fact about the following hour because it was the best hour on the road. The dog called itself the Dog Emperor. It claimed, between attacks, to have served the nameless Immortal King through 2 lifetimes, walked beside a second sovereign called the One-Leaf Immortal Emperor, and exchanged nods with the legendary Immortal Emperor Tian Huang, which made this mangy heckler, if even a third of it was true, the single best connected being I had ever met. It fought me with formation arts of genuinely imperial lineage, a yin-yang shadow array, 81 heaven thunders, 108 fire talismans, deployed with the skill of a master and the strategy of a toddler, all while providing running commentary on my unworthiness to be its pet. I broke every array at the keystone, caught it 3 times by the hind leg, and held on through one authentic attempt to bite my arm off, jaws, I noted with respect, that dented my king-grade body. When it finally hung upside down from my fist, panting, out of talismans, it switched postures with zero shame, wagged, and opened negotiations. Fine, you may transport me out of this tomb, as my honored porter. The tomb's exit needed its teleport array, its array needed my mark, and its resident needed me, after Eris sealed in a coffin by persons unknown for reasons it claimed, eyes sliding left, to have entirely forgotten. We had a deal in minutes. We had a wardrobe dispute for longer, because I was returning to a camp of women with a large male dog wearing nothing but confidence, and some standards exist. I found, in a looted storage bag, 1 pair of flower print shorts, Sangrade silk, objectively magnificent. The dog looked at the shorts. The dog looked at me. The dog said it had watched emperors rise and fall and would not be wearing florals. I observed that the alternative to florals was neutering. The dog emperor wears florals to this day. It has informed me at length that it is biding its time, that its vengeance will be studied by historians, and that when it steals my bell, it announced this openly, planning out loud is its love language. I will regret everything. Then Ryu scratched its head at the reunion camp, and it forgot its entire agenda for 6 hours, purring like a landslide, floral shorts shining in the firelight. Somewhere above the sky, I'd learn much later, 3 retired sovereigns, the nameless Immortal King, Tian Huang, and One Leaf, were watching their old dog leave with its new owner through a scrying mirror, laughing so hard that one of them had to sit down. The road gives you family in the strangest denominations. You bank them anyway, even the ones in florals. The road's last leg began with a hearse. A 5-colored altar lit the dead planet's sky, and down through the torn void came our ferry. 9 bronze dragons drawing a bronze coffin the size of a city. The 9 dragons' coffin, the ancient shuttle of the final crossing. You ride to your destiny inside a coffin. The road's sense of humor is bone dry, and I respect it completely. The coffin's inner walls taught a survival craft during transit, the art of refining a kun corpse, because our destination was the boundless sea, an ocean of liquefied space-time, the solidified origin blood of creation, whose waves don't drown you so much as timestamp you into oblivion. No flying over it, no going around it. A scout squadron tried and returned a day later, having covered by their own log 1/10,000th of nothing. The only vessels that survive the crossing are the corpses of the sea's own dead leviathans, star-sea kuns, whale things the size of provinces, marinated in temporal law until their hulls shrug off the waves. To cross the sea of time, you sail a corpse. The road never met a metaphor it didn't weaponize. The sea's welcome station was a black ziggurat called the Town Formation Tower, which rose from the waves on our arrival and offered a package deal. 10 days of suppressed waves for everyone, and on its crown lotus, a baptism of gathered star power for exactly one person. A vortex of galaxies was already condensing overhead, aimed at a lotus throne with 1 seat. The seat had an occupant before the announcement finished echoing. A tower of a man with a jaw like a monument vaulted up, planted himself on the lotus, and introduced the whole sea to his personal slogan, I am Mo Tian, first of the Xuanqiang domain. Standing atop the sacred lotus, I rule the world. On the starry sky ancient road, 1. Reign supreme, challenge me, and we duel life and death. It even rhymed in the original. He'd clearly rehearsed. The lotus drew challengers like a lamp draws moths. The best of them was a genuine monster, Changge of the North Sea, a golden holy body that had transformed at 15, a boy who'd once outpunched a full realm above himself, and Mo Tian beat him, cleanly. The man's physique was a purpose-built nightmare, 9 blood-red chains tipped with void holes that drank other divine bodies' power, a domain that suppressed every bloodline it touched, a body born specifically to bully other bodies. He stood over the coughing golden holy body, spread his arms to the sea, and did the slogan again, louder, with choreography. I let him have the full performance. The crowd deserves a complete villain before the punchline. Then I stepped up onto the air and said my line, I'm here, you should leave. He recognized me. My folklore had beaten me to the sea and made the correct decision, which was terror, followed by the incorrect decision, which was pride. His chains came up, his domain opened. His body-suppressing void holes reached for my physique with vacuum cleaner confidence and found nothing to suppress. My bones aren't a divine body. My bones are paperwork from a higher department. 1 slap, open palm, dragon and phoenix in the follow-through. He left the lotus in the flat trajectory of a skipped stone, and I settled onto the throne, cracked my neck, and addressed the horizon he'd vanished over with the request that became the road's favorite ritual. That slogan was excellent. Say it again from down there. Silence from the horizon. The whole tower crowd, 10,000 strong, held its breath, and then, faint, wind carried, from a great distance and a face-down position, came the voice of Mo Tian performing his own slogan into the sand. Standing atop the sacred lotus, I rule the world. The sea did not stop laughing for 3 days. Neither did my dog. The baptism itself was worth every theatrical second. I sat cross-legged on that lotus with a galaxy pouring down onto my skull, and for the first time since the Stargate, I let my actual cultivation move. I'd been embarrassingly derelict about it. I'd spent months collecting fists and eyes and bells and a bell daughter and a talking dog while my realm sat exactly where I'd left it. Because when you can already backhand quasi-emperors, grinding levels feels like a rich man clipping coupons. But the nameless emperor's whole sermon had been about foundation, and I'd rebuilt mine from the studs, so when the star power hit that foundation, it didn't just fill me, it poured, and I climbed 2 full stages in one sitting, each one polished to its ceiling before I let the next one start, the way the dead man taught me. I came out of it feeling for the first time like the ranking on heaven's list wasn't a clerical error in my favor. I'd earned the top slot with borrowed miracles. Now I was starting to earn it with my own back. The tower then made good on the group rate, flattened the sea's waves for 10 days, and the era's flotilla of corpse ships put out from shore in every direction, racing the calm. 10 days of calm, then the sea remembered itself. The first rogue wave of restored spacetime took 3 ships near us into last century. The second one came for us. And this is where the fortunes had already drawn me a map, so when the wall of liquid time crested over our hull, I had manhwa, Liwei, and Changge lashed to my side, and I'd left Ryu and the dog unlashed on the far rail, on purpose. The wave hit, the world tore, and my fiancé and my florals-wearing con artist of a dog went spinning off into the temporal deep together, exactly as scheduled, while the rest of us rode the same surge 40 light-years in the opposite direction. The girls were horrified. I wasn't, and told them why. I'd read the itinerary. Somewhere out in that ocean, at the bottom of a scheduled vortex, there was an emperor's skeleton with a legacy nobody had claimed in an era. The wave that took Ryu was, per her fortune, a delivery service. You threw your fiancé into the sea of time, said Changge, in the tone of a woman updating a diagnosis, because her luck told you it would give her presence. I said the dog was with her. That, said Changge, is not the reassurance you think it is. It was, though. Because whatever else the dog emperor is, thief, menace, walking copyright claim on 2 emperors' biographies, it is the single most road-wise creature alive, and somewhere out on the boundless water, it was about to prove that even its worst habit could strike gold. Its worst habit, for the record, is knowing everything and monologuing about it. Its second worst is licking. Ryu's leg of the voyage, reconstructed from her triumphant retelling and the dog's corrections, went like this. The wave dropped girl and dog in open sea. The dog sniffed the horizon, announced, "This way, little girl, I smell dead royalty," and marched across the water on its own portable formation like a commuter who owns the bridge. At the bottom of a scheduled vortex, they found a pocket of stilled time, hundreds of kun corpses drifting in silence, and on the greatest of them, a skeleton in imperial posture, dead in era, its legacy uncollected, because everything below emperor rank that approached it died of pressure. The dog parked itself outside the pressure radius and coached. Ryu walked in. The completed yin-yang divine body treats hostile pressure as a rude form of weather, sat before the bones and comprehended the great Nirvana Sutra, an emperor's scripture whose one sentence of description says everything. It contains all dharmas, a universal adapter for divine abilities. Every technique she ever learns now plugs into it and comes out amplified. Price of coaching, head scratches, delivered on demand, plus 1 standing order of roast meat at the next civilization. The dog emperor drives a hard bargain and is bought completely by chin rubs. Both facts are load-bearing. They also collected a kun corpse for a boat, and this detail she buried in the retelling and the dog gleefully exhumed. She was ambushed en route to the rendezvous. Mo Tian, freshly slapped over the horizon by me, washed up near her sandbar, recognized the fiancé of the man who'd ruined his slogan, and decided to retrieve his dignity from a girl a head shorter than him. The dog offered to handle it. Ryu said no, this one's mine. He said rude things about my fiancé. The Xuanqiang domain's first-ranked, body-suppressing chains and all, discovered in rapid sequence, that her formations don't care about physique suppression, that the judge's coffin fits all sizes, and that the tiny girl in his grip radius was carrying a quasi-emperor cauldron gifted by her monster of a partner, which she deployed with the sweet phrase my brother Lin Yuan gave me this, specifically for beating scoundrels like you. The road's folklore recorded its shortest verse. The supreme reign of Mo Tian ended at the hands of a girl who hit him with a wedding gift. Our own crossing paid out in parallel. Changge's fortune led us to a drifting kun corpse with a crystal grown on its brow, condensed from an era of the Leviathan digesting temporal law, and when I gifted the crystal onward, the return rewrote my skeleton, the devouring immortal crystal. Shards of a fallen immortal emperor's spine, fused with the law of devouring itself. My immortal bone drank it over 10 days of refinement and emerged transformed, the swallowing heavenly immortal bone, with a new secret art that changed the economics of every fight I'd ever have. Origin Devour. From any supreme divine body whose owner has utterly lost the will to resist, beaten flat, spirit folded, surrender total, the bone can sip a single wisp of the body's origin. 1 drop from a full jar, the owner regrows it without ever noticing. The bone then gestates that wisp in my sea into a complete divine body embryo, and an embryo can be consumed, feeding my bones awakening, or gifted, granting the recipient that body's powers and, wilder still, triggering in the original owner a second transformation, the once-in-an-era sublimation every genius prays for. Read that again the way I did. My cheat now converts beaten enemies into upgrades for my women, with the side effect of accidentally improving the enemies. It is the most morally confusing weapon on the road, and I have never used anything with more enthusiasm. I did sit with the ethics of it for a while, because I try to at least visit my conscience even if I don't move in. Here is where I landed. I don't take from the willing, and I don't take from the fallen. I take one drop from someone who has just tried to enslave, eat, or murder a person I love at the exact moment they've stopped being able to. They regrow the drop by morning and never miss it. Half of them get stronger for the theft. If a philosopher wants to build me a cage out of that arithmetic, I'll wait in it comfortably. My women don't ask me to feel bad, and my women are the ones who'd have been the trophies. I'll carry the moral confusion. It weighs less than they would. The crystal's kun, incidentally, came with a tenant. We discovered this because our new boat's mouth, a cavern you could parade an army through, occasionally growled. Ships don't growl. The dog, consulted, sniffed once, and delivered its verdict with visible delight. Primordial vicious beast boy. The old kuns swallowed them whole and couldn't digest them. This one's been living in there since before your civilization had nouns. Wonderful pets, terrible personalities. It then sat down at a safe distance with the air of a spectator who has already bought snacks. Changge decided she wanted it. I want the record to reflect that I advised against this exactly once, was given the look, the winter sky one, the one that has ended holy wars, and spent the next 3 days as assistant beast tamer to a reincarnated immortal with a project. Because here's what the boundless sea does to a household. After weeks of waves and villains, a genuinely dangerous hobby starts looking like a spa treatment. The beast, when we went in after it, turned out to be a cathedral of muscle and grievance, all horn and furnace breath, primordial power rolling off it in heat waves, the kind of creature the old world built myths around, and then built walls against the myths. It had spent an era in the dark being the biggest thing in its universe. Its response to visitors was theological. It identified us as heresy and charged. What followed was the most honest fun of the entire crossing. Changge fought it the way she does everything, precisely, coldly, escalating through techniques like a duchess going through gears, and the beast matched her, absorbing swordlight and returning avalanches, wrecking cavern walls that had survived geological ages. Twice, she got batted across the chamber and rose with her hair loose and her eyes bright in a way I'd never once seen in combat against people. On day 2, it slammed her through a rib pillar, and she came up laughing. One short, shocked, gorgeous sound, the first I'd ever heard from her, and the beast paused, equally shocked, possibly having also never heard it. On day 3, I stepped in, on schedule, for the closing argument. The beast required a demonstration of hierarchy. The immortal bone provided one, and with its fury pinned under my palm, Changge moved in with the taming arts of a holy land plus 8 lifetimes of bedside manner, and talked a primordial catastrophe down into a very large, very embarrassed house cat. She named nothing. She refuses to name it. Names are for pets, she says, and this is a colleague. The colleague now sleeps coiled in the boat's mouth, takes treats from her hand with terrifying delicacy, and growls at exactly one entity, the dog, who growls back, and the two of them have maintained a border dispute of pure principle across the entire remaining voyage, patrolled daily, resolved never. Manhwa, auditing the aftermath from the rail, observed that our household now contained a bell with a child in it, a magistrate with a coffin, a dog with a dynasty, and a cathedral with separation anxiety, and that at current acquisition rates we would need either a bigger boat or a constitution. We got both, eventually. The constitution is 1 line long, and Ryu drafted it. Everyone eats, nobody kneels, the dog wears the shorts. It has never once been amended. First deposits came courtesy of the sea's local villains, who continued to volunteer with the reliability of tides. The venue for the deposits was the Time Sandbar, and the dog briefed us on approach with the relish it reserves for other people's hazards. Golden beach ahead, it announced from the bow. Every grain is 1,000,000 years of compressed time. Touch it carelessly and one of 3 things happens. The sand runs you forward. Congratulations, you're 90. The sand stops you. Congratulations, you're a statue with a surprised expression. There's a gallery of those, very popular. Or the sand runs you backward. Backward sounded survivable, and Ryu said so. I'd just be a baby. Babies are cute. Babies, said the dog, have the cultivation of a baby. On a beach, in the boundless sea, surrounded by the era's most competitive orphans. You'd be the cutest thing anyone ate that week. My fiancée reconsidered her position on infancy. The actual defense, the dog continued, was trivial for anyone whose soul outweighed their ambitions. Hold your spirit firm, and the sands can't get a grip on your timeline, which meant our household strolled ashore untouched while all around us the beach displayed its gallery. Geniuses frozen mid-stride with their hands out toward treasures, white-bearded 20-year-olds sitting in the dunes with the long stare of men who'd napped through their own lives, and the small, terrible sandals of those who'd bet wrong on backward. The road doesn't post warnings. The road is the warning, laid out in exhibits. At the sandbar's mid-station, a golden shore stretching to both horizons, littered with the frozen and the withered who'd napped wrong, we found a matinee already running. One Jianfeng of the Kangling domain, Eastern Emperor Divine Body, 9 crowns of sunfire, occupied in cornering a stunning ice phoenix of a woman and offering her the traditional choice between his affection and his displeasure. Her name was Fen Ling, first beauty of the Phoenix Heaven domain, holy maiden of a Yaoguang branch line, and she was already bleeding through her robes and still telling him no with her whole chest, preparing, by the look of her stance, to detonate her own spirit sea rather than lose. Quality. You can't teach that. I did my line, who dares claim supremacy here, and the sun-crowned romantic learned the sequence everyone learns, the suppress-all physiques trick, useless on my bones, the one slap, the horizon, and then, because his divine body regenerated with genuinely enviable speed and his mouth healed first, round 2, ending with my boot on his cheek and the ritual request. He performed his own slogan into the sand, on the starry sky ancient road, I reign supreme, muffled, with sand in it, and his utterly broken surrender fed my new bone its first wisp of Eastern Emperor origin. Then I healed his victim with the J's secret, layer 9, palms of golden light, a saintess of a Yaoguang line, patched to perfect by a stranger with immortal hands, and Fen Ling looked at me the way people look at weather changing their harvest. Her clan branch, she said carefully, traced to the Beidou Dao domain, as did mine, I said. Her Holy Land's mother sect sat in the eastern wilderness, as did my clan's main line, I said. She observed that the road to Beidou was dangerous alone. My household, watching this negotiation, wore 4 identical expressions of women counting chairs at a table. She traveled with us, and the gift engine met her the way it meets everyone I decide matters. The Eastern Emperor embryo, my bone finished gestating, went to her, an enemy's stolen fire, regrown as a present, and her ice phoenix divine body took the graft and transformed, second sublimation, wings of frost running with veins of imperial sun. Somewhere behind us on the sandbar, the man she'd refused was still face down, entirely unaware that his stolen wisp had just become a stranger's dowry. The road's last 2 challengers barely rate verses. A stalker suitor of Changge's named Li Jian, who'd fled her previous disasters and returned for credit, announced himself her savior, threatened to gouge out my eyes, and got archived. And one blood thousand blades, an innate Tao fetus talent with 3 law patterns and a habit of introducing himself in the third person, ambushed me from inside a sand dune, hit my chest point blank with his sex unhealable god-slaying finger, and spent the next minute watching me not die of it while my household didn't even stand up. His origin wisp joined the collection. His body joined the dune, inverted, legs kicking, a punctuation mark visible from the tower. The time sandbar's final gift waited behind a curtain of temporal law. A garden of innate Tao patterns, crystallized threads of heaven's own weave, the raw prerequisite for any future emperor's fruit. A genius comprehends one and celebrates for a decade. Changge took 3, manhwa 3, Liyue 2, and lit up like a festival. Ruyu, arriving fashionably late by Kun boat with her dog and her new emperor's sutra, took 3 before dinner. I took 9, all 9. And the 9, complete, did what no record I've found says they can do. Braided themselves into a single 9-colored ultimate pattern, one thread of heaven's loom wound into a cable and settled into my sea beside the wheel, the dragon, the phoenix, the 2 sages, and the bell where my daughter lives. Somewhere far ahead, on the golden list above a mainline world, 5 names shoved 5 old names off the board at once, and an entire planet's worth of ancient clans looked up from their tea. The Beidou Dao domain had just received our RSVP. Past the sea's last sandbar, the road stopped being a gauntlet and became a river again. The starry night Milky Way, a calm silver channel pouring out of the boundless sea toward a distant glow. And for once, since we'd stepped onto this whole cursed road, nobody was actively trying to harvest us. A month's cruise. An actual, honest cruise. Not everyone shared the last leg. Hao Yue had peeled off way back at the branching of the roads, chosen the Kunlun fork alone, with the logic he'd delivered straight-faced at the parting. Cousin, anywhere you go, the opportunities orbit you. If I want my own legend, I have to go where you aren't. It's the smartest thing any rival ever said about me, and he said it grinning, and I'd bet the bell will meet at the burial sea with his legend fully grown. Qingjue's road, meanwhile, had merged with ours completely, her Holy Land's mother sect, and my clan's main line sat practically next door to each other in Beidu's eastern wilderness. Fate doesn't do subtlety anymore where I'm concerned. It does seating charts. The cruise itself turned into two entertainments. The first was the scenery. The void out there is museum country, and our resident know-it-all in floral shorts appointed itself tour guide. The dog would plant itself at the bow, clear its throat like a lecturer, and narrate. That, children, is the starry rainbow bridge, the corpse light of a self-detonated star god. The 7 colors are its shattered laws, still flowing. That is the eternal eye. Do not look at it longer than 3 breaths. It looks back and it remembers. That frozen ring is the blood of an ice dragon that lost an argument with someone I personally knew. Great guy, terrible temper. The second entertainment was watching my women fact-check the dog, because every single one of them kept recognizing the wonders too, and every single one had a cover story, and the cover stories were terrible. Changge would go, I have read of this, in the ancient texts of my holy land, for the 4th wonder in a row. Her Holy Land's library was apparently infinite and weirdly focused on deep void tourism. Manhwa would go, I glimpsed this, in a memory fragment, from the turbulent abyss of the nameless emperor's realm. Her one abyss dip had allegedly contained an encyclopedia, and the two of them had started giving each other long, thoughtful looks over the excuses, 2 reincarnated somebodies, each maintaining a paper-thin civilian identity, each slowly concluding the other was exactly what she herself was, both convinced I hadn't noticed anything. I collected the excuses the way other men collect jade. My personal favorite came the night Changge, after narrating a nebula shaped like a funeral lotus, turned to me with studied casualness and asked what I thought of it, fishing, transparently, for evidence that I was some immortal emperor's reincarnation, like, she didn't say the like her part, but her eyebrows said it. I told her the truth. Never seen it before in my life, but once I'm an emperor, I'll go poke it. She nodded slowly, filed my answer under too composed, definitely an immortal emperor, and the misunderstanding compounded another week's interest. My biography, as maintained by my own household, has never once been accurate. I've stopped correcting it. The fiction is doing wonders for morale. Beidu announced itself before we saw it. 5 names hit the Feather Ascension Golden List. Mine, Qingye's, Meihua's, Ruyu's, Li Yue's, our 9 patterns and change registering on Heaven's ledger the moment we crossed into the domain's jurisdiction, and 5 old names got shoved off a board that a whole planet of ancient clans uses to arrange its marriages and wars. By the time our Kunboat reached the starport, the arrival terminal looked like a job fair for demigods. Actual banners, actual bidding, sex promising 100 saint-grade resources per head, a quasi-emperor weapon for a signature, senior disciples holding signs with our names miswritten in 3 scripts, and cutting through all of it like a hound through fog came a young man holding a blood-red jade, wild-eyed, tracking the jade's glow directly to my chest, where he stopped, stared, and delivered the greatest opening line in family history. It's you. It's really you. I said that depended heavily on who he thought I was. His name was Lin Hao, divine son of the Beidu family's main line, and the jade in his fist held our shared ancestors' blood, 200,000 years of separation lighting up like a struck lamp. Behind him, his younger sister, Lin Yu, was already crying and pretending not to. The lost branch had come home, and the main line had been standing at the port for days, taking shifts, holding a rock, and hoping. There was one hiccup, and it told me everything good about these people. The jade lit for me, blood is blood, but stayed dark for Manhwa, and the port went awkwardly silent while my cousin explained, chin level, adopted. An orphan the branch clan took in for her bone, raised as blood, never told otherwise until she was old enough for it not to matter. Lin Hao looked at the dark jade, looked at her, then he grabbed her hand and announced, at parade volume, blood or no blood, whoever the Gu family raises is the Gu family, welcome home cousin, and his sister hugged her before he finished the sentence. Manhwa, twice boned, once reborn, terror of underworld siblings, stood in a strange port on a strange world being hugged by strangers who owed her nothing, and her composure did the thing it does maybe once a year. Some returns don't come from the system. The last of the port business sorted itself with the neatness fate now reserves for me. A saintess of Yaoguang's main holy land, one Huarong, had been sent to the terminal to recruit list toppers, found us all pre-claimed by the Gu clan, and then discovered Qingjuei, a daughter of Yaoguang's lost branch line, standing in our company with an ice phoenix body in its 2nd transformation. Her recruiting trip became a family reunion in stereo. Qingjuei would ride to Yaoguang with her sister sex 20 minutes by crane from my clan's mountains, and she extracted my promise to visit with the ruthless leverage of a woman who has seen me keep every promise on the road, which left one final pre-homecoming errand, the city, Kaoj, the port metropolis, where my provincial wealth met mainline economics. The dog demanded roast chicken. Ruyu bought it a roast chicken. The vendor looked at our spirit stones, top grade back home, a currency I'd bankrolled wars with, the way a jeweler looks at seashells. Saint spirit stones only, out here. The main domain runs on a denomination my entire home galaxy would classify as legend. The dog ate its chicken while Lin Hao paid, radiating the smugness of a creature that has always known where the real money lives. Then my new cousin, mortified by the currency incident, insisted on hosting properly and took us to the drunken immortal abode, Keoge's finest, a restaurant where the ingredients have bounties and the wine list reads like a bestiary. 2 years of void rations and corpse boat catering, and suddenly, braised cloud boar that dissolves into chi on the tongue, 1,000-year osmanthus wine, a soup whose steam formed tiny auspicious cranes. Ryu wept openly into a plate of honeyed dragon prawn. The judge was not summoned, but I believe it would have wept too. The dinner conversation is where Lin Hao got his real education about the Branch family in 3 courses. Course 1, he asked politely about our journey. Li Yue, our designated diplomat, said it had been eventful. Course 2, he asked, cousin to cousin, man to man, whether I'd, ever actually fought anyone serious out there, because no offense, but the Outer Domain's rankings run soft, and Beidu's geniuses are monsters, and he'd hate for me to get embarrassed at the reunion banquet in front of the Wang family. He said this kindly. He said this while refilling my cup, the way you'd counsel a promising but sheltered nephew. Ryu made a sound into her prawns like a tea kettle achieving enlightenment. Course 3, he asked what was funny. And my women, my loyal, discreet, professionally secretive women, fell over each other to educate him. They started with the Stargate and Ming Yu. They got through the reef, the quasi-emperor souls, the emperor's tomb, the kneel properly incident. Ryu performed both parts, standing on her chair for the giant, and were just warming up toward the platform of atonement when Lin Hao, who had gone the color of good porcelain, held up one hand and asked the waiter quietly for the entire remaining stock of the 1,000-year osmanthus. He drank for a while. Then he looked at me with new eyes and said the thing that made him family for life. So what you're telling me is, at the banquet, I should bet on you, heavily, against everyone. Financial literacy. It runs in the bloodline. Fine, I said, once the plates were cleared, and reached for the luggage. Time to liquidate some souvenirs. Lin Hao asked politely what I had to sell. I want it noted that I answered him honestly and that what happened to his face over the following minute was not my fault. What do you have to sell? He asked. 300 king-grade weapons, I said. 35 Saint grade, 4 quasi-emperor divine weapons, assorted. Lin Hao's face performed a 5-act tragedy. Act 1, polite smile. Act 2, recount on fingers. Act 3, the arithmetic of how many dead owners 300 king weapons implies. Act 4, a careful sideways step. Act 5, in a small voice, cousin, did you rob a war? Li Yu mercifully supplied the family's official cover story. A 9 lifetimes emperor rampaged at the platform of atonement. Hundreds fell. We merely, tidied the battlefield, which Lin Hao accepted with visible relief and total incorrectness, and which I have never contradicted, because the truth that their new cousin is the reason the road has folklore is a homecoming conversation for a later decade. The auction house of KOG received us the way banks receive earthquakes. 300 king weapons hit their intake desk. The appraiser aged a full sandbar. I kept the saint weapons. 25 of them are ammunition for my emperor-slaying platform, which is a sentence I enjoy owning, and the quasi-emperor pieces, because feeding those to the platform someday is a firework I'm saving for a special occasion. The kings alone sold for 90,000 first-grade Saint Spirit stones, a sum that made our escort clerk develop a stutter, and I walked back out into the city, rich in the correct currency, and immediately began my favorite activity, shopping for gifts. Main domain shelves, a binding full household, you see the shape of the afternoon. 2 Saint-grade treasures surfaced at auction, a bottle of 10 Saint Spirit pills, each one a bottled epiphany, and a vial of holy fairy blood that upgrades a body's very bloodline, and I bought both at prices that made Lin Hao grip the railing. Then, in front of my new cousin, I handed the pill bottle to Ryu with the words, "Eat these like candy, they're good for you." Lin Hao made a sound like a kettle with a conscience. Those cost 30,000, and Ryu, who has been wealthy beyond mortal comprehension since she was up to my elbow, popped one, nodded like a sommelier, and offered the bottle around. The system's returns on the afternoon. The pills came back as a bottle of 9 Revolutions Emperor Marrow pills, 10 Emperor Grade pills, each one capable of gifting a cultivator a strand of true Emperor's bloodline, and the fairy blood came back as a drop of Tang Snake immortal blood that went into my own veins and made the dragon and phoenix in my sea welcome a serpentine third cousin. My body's blood now runs hot enough that winter has become a rumor. 10 Emperor pills. Hold the number. It's about to cause 4 separate cardiac events. The first 2 happened on the ride home. I gave one pill each to Qingzhui and her new senior sister Huarong as parting gifts when their crane peeled off toward Yaoguang. Qingzhui because she's mine and I look after mine. Huarong because she'd be Qingzhui's whole support structure in a strange sect and I believe in tipping the staff. Huarong held the emperor-grade pill like a live coal, ran the etiquette mathematics of accepting a clan war-grade treasure from a stranger, found no protocol, and defaulted to a bow so deep her hairpins were at risk. Somewhere behind her eyes, I watched my file open in a third Holy Land's intelligence system. The next two cardiac events were Lin Hao and Lin Yu, to whom I tossed pills the way you toss housewarming fruit. My new cousin stared at an emperor-grade treasure in his palm, looked up, and asked, with the deep sincerity of a man rechecking his adoption papers, "Cousin, are you stupid?" Then he pocketed it at speed and made me swear not to tell his father, which is the fastest moral collapse I've had the privilege to witness. The homecoming itself outdid every fantasy I'd packed. The Gu family's territory in the eastern wilderness runs 300,000 alai of mountains wrapped in immortal light, and every lie of it was hung with lanterns for us. Dragon horses in the sky, banners on the peaks. The Lost Branches return, celebrated like a coronation, because, as the family had explained, holding my hands in both of his with tears standing in his eyes, for 200,000 years, you were our missing children. The head of the family, Wen Hao, my granduncle by the main line, a saint with a laugh that loosens roof tiles. His wife, Lady Hua Qing, quasi-saint of the 9th layer, elegant in the way of blades displayed on silk, formerly of Yaoguang Holy Land. The whole eastern wilderness, I was learning, is one big alumni network. They threw a banquet that emptied 3 lakes of wine, and at it, my new aunt gave manhwa and me welcome gifts of king-grade medicine with the apology that she'd had no time to prepare properly. Reciprocity is sacred. I took out pill number 5. The banquet hall's acoustics were excellent, so the sound of 100 elders inhaling at once as Emperor Might rolled off my little gift really filled the space. My aunt looked at the 9 Revolutions Emperor Marrow pill being offered to her across the table, a treasure whose existence starts clan wars, and her famous elegance held for a full 3 seconds before she tried to push it back with both hands like it was on fire. My uncle stood up so fast his chair left. The phrase, "Do you know what this is?" was deployed by 4 people simultaneously. I explained that I had spares. The word spares did structural damage down the length of the table. My uncle sat back down without a chair being present. And my aunt, a quasi-saint stuck at the 9th layer for longer than anyone at that table dared mention, looked at the pill and at me and accepted it with the slow, deliberate hands of a woman taking possession of the rest of her life and pivoted instantly into negotiation because Eastern Wilderness women do not do speechless for long. Then your aunt will not take it for free. Yaoguang's holy pool completes its 1,000-year transformation this season. I'll get you a place in the baptism if it costs me my old-school face. Around the table, elders made the sound men make at auctions. Deal, I said, having no idea what the pool was, on the principle that has guided this entire road. When fate offers you a subscription, sign first, read features later. Under the table, Lin Hao leaned over and whispered the last word on the whole evening. "Cousin, I've changed my mind about you being stupid. You're a natural disaster with good manners. Best review I've ever gotten." The dog disagreed. The dog rates me 3 lifetimes out of 5, deducting 2 for the shorts. After the banquet came the formality every arriving talent owes their new roof, the divine body inspection. Closed courtyard, family heads and senior elders only, because when you audit potential of our grade, you keep the audience short and sworn. The girls went first, and I got to watch the main line of an ancient clan discover, item by item, what the branch had mailed home. Ruyu stepped up, sweet as festival candy, and manifested the completed yin-yang divine body, a 1,000-foot gate of black and white behind her, the judge's shadow leaning in the doorway like a bailiff checking the docket, and casually, as a footnote, the heavenly Tao fate wheel turning in her spirit sea plus 3 innate patterns. The elders' polite smiles died of scale. Somebody whispered that's an Empress template and got shushed for stating the obvious. Li Yue bowed, apologized for the modesty of her offering, her words, and manifested the Moon Emperor Sword God body, second transformation, a 1,000-foot moonlit Empress phantom with a 3-foot Imperial icicle in its grip, 2 innate patterns. The courtyard's temperature dropped by choice. Changge didn't bother with modesty. The sky over the estate tore, immortal light fell like judgment, and she stood on a white jade lotus of 36 petals wearing battle script of the Immortal King grade. The immaculate Immortal King body, second transformation, the physique whose ceiling isn't emperor, it's the thing emperors pray to. 3 patterns. My new uncle made a noise I associate with load-bearing walls. Then manhwa, who simply said, twin supreme bones, and let the two of them flare through her robes in tandem, and watched a courtyard of saints perform the domain-wide arithmetic. Heaven issues one of those per era, and arrive at answers with no precedent. And then it was my turn. And I stood there in front of my new family experiencing a problem I want you to appreciate. Everything I could show them was illegal. The bone is contraband from a banned realm of power. The eyes are the same, upgraded. The bell is a supreme imperial weapon forged by a mortal, which is a sentence that starts theological incidents. My aunt, misreading my pause with perfect kindness, was already smoothing it over. Bloodkin needs no test, some talents are quiet, and the elders were assembling their gentlest faces, and the whole yard settled into the warm consensus that the poor branch boy was ordinary and mustn't be embarrassed. Bless him, look how well his women turned out. My women were vibrating. 4 straight faces over 4 internal detonations. So I gave the family the mildest thing I own, the Dharma vision. Just the picture, no pressure. That was the plan anyway. But the Immortal King descends to the 9 heavens has never respected my settings menu. The sky opened. The golden phantom stood up over the estate in my exact likeness, crowned in descending light, and the assembled leadership of an ancient clan, saints, elders, my chairless uncle, hit their knees. Not etiquette. Ballistics. The pressure took them down like weather takes wheat, and from the family's forbidden ground across the mountains, 6 ancient somethings woke up and looked over at once. I dialed it back fast. The elders got up, rehung their dignity, and did the thing proud old men do, insisting they'd knelt on purpose, out of respect, definitely voluntary, while in the back, Ancestor Kai's voice echoed in my memory, I am never kneeling to anything again. Sir, wherever you are on the road, your record is safe. These were fresh knees. The ancient somethings arrived in person before the dust settled. 6 quasi-emperor ancestors of the main line, led by one Lin Guang, young-faced the way only the truly old are, eyes like audit season, who looked me over slowly and said the most refreshing sentence of my new century. Boy, even I can't see through you. Explain. And here I made a good decision, disguised as a reckless one. You can't tell a quasi-emperor nothing. He'd already seen too much. So I gave him a cover story of the highest grade. I claimed my strange power came from a legacy of the devouring heaven empress, history's mightiest human woman, whose law genuinely is engraved on my bell, whose techniques genuinely did reach me through the system's returns, making it the rare lie that's mostly receipts. A legacy that lets me, among other things, refine a defeated foe's essence and gift second transformations. I demonstrated with the visions I'd legitimately collected: sun crowns, black tortoise armor, purple dawn of the Tao fetus, moonlit sword empress, the immortal lotus, flicking through borrowed divinities like a man showing holiday paintings. The courtyard's reaction taught me something about the dignity of the ancient. 6 quasi-emperors, beings who bend history by clearing their throats, heard second transformations, and stampeded. My own granduncle grabbed my shoulders. Swallow me. My aunt, the picture of courtly elegance. Aunt also has a divine body. Devour your aunt immediately. Elders formed an actual queue. Somewhere in it, a 9-realm saint was pulling seniority on a 7-realm saint over devouring order, and Lin Guang, quasi-emperor, 9th realm, terror of his era, hovered at the queue's edge performing the elaborate unconcern of a cat near an unattended fish. I explained with regret I mostly manufactured the legacy's tragic fine print. The devoured must be weaker than me and must carry a supreme-grade body, and thus, alas, no one present qualified. The queue dissolved into the special grief of the powerful denied a shortcut. My aunt took it hardest and my uncle took it least gracefully. He asked twice more over the following days, hypothetically, as one asks about a diet. Lin Guang settled for the other transaction. He took my guardianship personally, a 9th realm quasi-emperor, self-assigned to a branch boy, pressed a soul jade into my hand with his mark in it, call early boy, dying mid-sentence is embarrassing for everyone, and closed the audit with a clan-wide gag order of the classic denomination, 9 generations. The Gu family knows how to keep a secret. It's had 200,000 years of practice missing us. They gave me a mountain to live on. Luoxia Peak, a summit of rose mist and 100-count palaces, staff included, dragon horses in the stable, the sort of address that comes with its own weather. The girls picked pavilions. The dog claimed a sun terrace, declared the household adequate, and demanded the kitchen be informed of its standing order. Home, as an institution, was starting to feel less like a memory and more like a fact, which is exactly when my aunt ate her pill. I ate mine first actually, pill number 6, in seclusion on my new mountain, because a treasure that grafts a strand of true emperor's bloodline into a body was not going to sit in my bag while I owned a bell with an empress's law on it. Imperial weapons answer imperial blood, and I intended to be on speaking terms with my own arsenal. The refinement took days. The pill broke down into liquid sunrise. My C's black script came down over it like scaffolding, and strand by strand, a filament of golden emperor blood wove itself into me. Somewhere in the middle of the process, my aura stopped asking permission. A pulse of unplanned emperor might rolled off Luoxia Peak and across 300,000 li of clan territory, rattling teacups, waking birds, and standing every hair on every neck from the front gate to the forbidden ground. I reined it in, embarrassed. Too late. Because at the family head's mansion, my aunt, who had spent a week circling her own pill like a duelist, felt that rolling might, made a decision with her whole chest, and swallowed hers on the spot. Lady Hua Qing had been stuck at the quasi-Saint Ninth layer for longer than her family dared say out loud. Genius of her generation at Yao Guang, married into legend, and then the wall. Decades of it. The kind of stuck that curdles into identity. The pill hit that wall like a siege engine made of dawn. Her breakthrough lit the estate before her formal announcement did, a column of saint light off the mansion, her aura climbing register after register like a bell choir, and the whole clan poured out of doorways in time for the part nobody plans a party around. The sky turned the color of judgment, and heaven's tribulation came down to collect its toll on a new saint. I'd never seen a tribulation. Where I grew up, elders crossed theirs in remote wastelands, quietly, ashamed of the risk. Here, the clan has a dedicated mountain for it. A tribulation altar the size of a town, veined with the protections of a dead emperor, because the main line does not do shame, it does infrastructure. 54 bolts, that's a saint's bill. They fall in escalating series, each one a different argument from heaven about why you should stay small, and the candidate answers everyone alone. The altar can steady your soul, but the sky, you fight yourself. My aunt answered all 54. I watched her shatter the early bolts with palm arts elegant as calligraphy, watched the middle series drive her to one knee and watched her use the knee as a firing platform, and watched the last bolt, 100 Changge dragon of judgment lightning that made the whole range flinch, come down on a woman who had been stuck for decades and was done apologizing for wanting more. She took it standing. When the light cleared, a saint stood on the altar with her hair unbound and her aura loose around her like a banner, and the clan's roar shook birds off mountains 3 territories over. She found me in the crowd afterward. My aunt the saint took my hands in front of 10,000 relatives with lightning burns still fading off her sleeves and said, "Without you, this life ends stuck. Ask this family for anything, forever." My uncle, a man who deals with strong emotion by administering things, dealt with his by announcement. From this day, Lin Yuan holds the rank of divine son of the Beidou Gu family, equal in standing to Lin Hao. 2 divine sons, 1 house, unheard of. The crowd went up again. I checked Lin Hao for bruised pride and found the opposite. He was beaming and leaned in to whisper the real reason. "If you're a divine son, father can't scold me for the pill you gave me. We're the same rank now." He thought about that for a second, then added, awed at his own logic, "I can't be punished. I'm unpunishable." Within the hour he'd been sent to muck the dragon horse stables for something unrelated, and I watched him go, unpunishable, with a shovel. The rank structure of the world's oldest institutions remains undefeated. There is always a mother. The celebration hadn't cooled when the horizon delivered the visit that would set my next road. A chariot of white jade crossed our border wards without slowing, 9 crane-drawn, wearing the sigil of Yao Guang, the main holy land itself, and my newly minted saint aunt looked up at it with an expression caught exactly between joy and calculation. "My senior sister," she said, "the holy master of Yao Guang, here, herself," and then lower to my uncle in the tone wives use to convey battle plans at parties. "She never travels for courtesy. She wants something. Get between her and Lin Yuan until we know what." Excellent instincts, my aunt. Aimed, as it turned out, 1 story too low, because what the holy master of Yaoguang wanted had already traveled ahead of her through the most efficient intelligence network in existence. 3 women in one sect telling each other secrets in strict confidence. And it concerned, of course, me. Here is how the secret traveled, reconstructed later from 3 separate confessions, each sworn to be the last link in the chain. Link 1. On the crane ride to Yaoguang, senior sister Hua Rong asked Qingge, sect to sect, colleague to colleague, how exactly her divine body had achieved second transformation, because transformations leave trails, and hers had none. Qingge tried, "I woke up like this." Hua Rong pointed out gently that the Holy Master would ask the same question with better instruments, so Qingge confessed the truth as she understood it. The divine son of the Gu family carries a legacy of the devouring heaven empress. He refines what he takes from beaten enemies into gifts. He handed me a second transformation the way other men hand over flowers. The crane, I'm told, flew crooked for a while. Link 2. Hua Rong, reporting to the Holy Master, attempted a neutral briefing and got exactly 4 sentences in before Xuan Yue, sovereign of Yao Guang, saint of the 9th realm at an age other saints call adolescence, one of the fabled twin beauties of the old eastern wilderness, stopped pacing and made her repeat the part about gifting transformations, twice. Then the Holy Master of the eastern wilderness's greatest sect sat down on her own throne steps, elegant as a folding fan, and thought in silence for a long time about her sect full of talented ceiling-locked women, and about every genius in her own generation who'd burned out against the transformation wall, and about certain walls of her own. Link 3 doesn't exist. Link 3 is where the chain was certainly going to stop, each confessor assured me, hand on heart. History's most secure secret. Only me, my women, one saintess, and the single most powerful woman in the eastern wilderness, who's next act was to order her chariot. So, the visit. 9 cranes, white jade, the works. Xuanyue descended on our celebrating estate with Qingzhui and Hua Rong in formation behind her, congratulated my aunt on her sainthood with the warm precision of an old classmate. They'd shared a master. The eastern wilderness really is one alumni reunion with weather, and then turned to the reason she'd come, which was standing next to the dessert table pretending to be furniture. Which one of you, she asked the room, is Lin Yuan? I bowed. The Holy Master of Yao Guang looked me over with eyes that had appraised 3 generations of prodigies, produced a Saint-grade pill from her sleeve as casually as a business card, and pressed it on me with the sentence, delivered dead level, in front of my entire assembled family. This Holy Master feels we shall get along famously. You could hear the estate's collective eyebrow. What followed was the most elite negotiation I've ever been a spectator at, conducted entirely in gifts, over tea, between 3 women, about me, while I held a teacup. My aunt, recognizing an opening bid when she saw one, countered instantly. The pill was too generous, the family couldn't accept, and incidentally, about the holy pool baptism she'd already promised me, she was prepared to pay double the sacred marrow for the slot. Xuanyue parried with a smile that has ended treaty disputes. No charge. She would take me to Yao Guang after the clan's reunion banquet personally, and I would bathe in the 1,000-year pool as her guest, gratis, because, and here she deployed the phrase a second time, with even less explanation, we get along famously. My aunt froze mid-counter with the expression of a fencer whose opponent has just handed over the sword. In the entire recorded history of Yao Guang, the pool has never been free, for anyone. Clans mortgage mountains for 1 slot. My uncle beamed at the miracle of it. My aunt smiled and never once stopped calculating. Lin Hao mouthed famously at me across the room. And the 2 junior saintesses behind the Holy Master maintained the serene, eyes-forward composure of women who knew exactly what their sovereign wanted from the strange new divine son, had been sworn to secrecy about it, and were finding the tea very interesting. Because I knew too, of course. My eyes don't need gossip chains. And her glance had rested one instant too long on my hands, the hands that allegedly dispensed transformations. The mightiest woman of the eastern wilderness had a sect of brilliant wall-locked daughters, and somewhere behind her, Saint's composure, a ledger of her own was open to a fresh page titled, What Would It Cost to Bind This Man to Yao Guang? Let her draft the page. I've read enough ledgers to know who ends up holding the pen. The visit rolled into the larger machine already turning around us. The clan's formal reunion banquet, 6 weeks out, invitations sent across the whole eastern wilderness and beyond. Every allied clan, every friendly holy land, including, my aunt noted with a specific dryness, the Changsheng Wang family of the northern plain, whose lady of the house was the other twin beauty of the old days, another Yao Guang alumna, and whose heir, Wan Zhaolei, had grown up loudly promising to marry my new cousin Lin Yu, and even more loudly promising to step on all rivals of his generation. I hadn't met the boy yet, but the intelligence had a familiar bouquet. Young master, emperor's bearing per his own father, coming to our banquet specifically to measure the new arrivals against his destiny. 6 weeks out. Same venue as my family's happiest day in 200,000 years. I put his name in the file where I keep the pre-owned slogans and went back to my tea. The night after the Holy Master's visit, my mountain finally exhaled. Lanterns down the terraces, the dog asleep on its sun-warmed stone, one ear up out of professional habit, floral shorts luminous in the moonlight like a tiny flag of surrender. Ruyu had commandeered a training yard and was teaching the judge to bow to elders, the 1,000-foot magistrate creaking through courtesies while she corrected its form. Lower, you're meeting my mother-in-law someday. And Li Yue and Qingyi sat on the far eve in the comfortable silence of 2 women who'd both crossed an ocean of time to end up sharing a teapot. Manhwa found me at the peak's edge, where the mist falls away and the clan's 300,000 Li of lantern light runs to the horizon like a spilled constellation. She didn't do preamble. She'd stopped doing preamble with me somewhere around the 2nd Imperial weapon. Xiao Ran, she said. Wang Cheng, you've heard the names. When the Emperor Road's final act opens, there'll be the Stormfront. One walks like a man who's already been immortal. The other once told Heaven that his fate belongs to himself, and Heaven, as far as anyone can tell, agreed to the terms. This world. She paused and chose the next words the way you choose footing on ice. This world has seen versions of the coming years. Versions where the people racing to the burial sea die there. Versions where a woman with 2 supreme bones stands against 10 emperors alone, and it isn't enough, and everyone she loves is already gone by then, so it doesn't even matter. She was looking at the lanterns when she said it, not at me. My cousin, who navigates roads she's never walked in this life, who hates strangers on sight for crimes committed against someone she used to be, who checked her math against me for a year and then stopped. I've never made her say it. I'm not going to make her say it here. Some files you keep closed out of love. What I said was, that version didn't have me in it. And manhwa, reborn empress, twice-bone terror, the loneliest survivor of a future that no longer exists, looked at me with lantern light in her eyes and let herself smile like a girl whose only cousin has promised to walk her home. This life, she agreed, has you in it. This time nobody falls. Then, because she is still her, and if someone must fall, we shall choose who, and schedule it. Family, you can gift-wrap destiny, but the sense of humor is hereditary. I stayed on the edge after she went down. I do my best thinking at altitude, at night, when the only witnesses are lanterns, and I had a lot to think about. I'd woken up 2 years ago as a man scheduled to die badly, and I was ending this stretch of road as a man his grandfather's grandfather had knelt to by accident. Somewhere between those two facts, I'd stopped being a transmigrator riding a cheat and started being whatever I was now. I turned my own hands over in the lantern light and looked at them. The hands that were supposed to steal a bone and didn't. The hands that had emptied a dragon's hoard into other people's palms and gotten miracles back. The hands a masked monarch was apparently studying from the top of the sky. Villain's hands, the old script said. I'd checked. They looked like anyone's. Then I took out the last open file, the one I'd promised myself I'd read to the bottom, the biggest one, who they keep seeing when they look at me. The dog told me most of it eventually. Pillow talk of the heavens, traded for chin scratches, because the dog emperor didn't just serve 2 sovereigns, it still hears things, through whatever channel connects an old dog to its old masters. And what it heard, cross-checked against a certain garden of flowers and a certain masked gaze I'd felt on my skin at the platform of atonement, assembled into this. Above every sky we can name, there is a court of beings who ascended out of this world's stories, immortal kings, and above them the true monarchs. One of them is a woman who never shows her face, bronze mask. The heavens gossip calls her the devouring heaven immortal king, the ascended original of the devouring heaven empress, the mightiest human. Woman in the history of everything, whose mortal world law is engraved on my bell, whose prison I emptied, whose planted seed, a girl on her 8th life, I walked beside through half a road. Chinlan's endless mission, the hymn she crosses lifetimes to find, the reason a chaos-bodied Tao fruit stopped in a crowd of kings and came straight to me. The empress had a brother, long before she was the empress. He was lost. How, even heaven's gossip goes quiet on, and she has spent power beyond counting and planted lifetimes in the soil of the mortal world, looking for him. And I, by whatever joke the universe filed under my paperwork, wear a face that echoes his. You are not him. You are just a similar flower. She watches me now, the masked monarch, through whatever window monarchs use. The dog says she argued about me with another of her rank, a green-robed sovereign called the Willow Deity, she of the Galaxy Canopy Tree, my one-time rescuer from the Burial God Tablet, who apparently examined my origins with the full instruments of an immortal king and found nothing, no trace, no thread. A man with no origin at all, carrying organs that shouldn't exist in a universe that bans them. 2 monarchs above the sky, holding my file, unable to read it. Their compromise, per the dog, verbatim, stop spying on the boy. Amended, same conversation, spy less, and await your return in ascension, the willow had said, over the corpse of an unborn god. I sat with all of it on the edge of my new mountain, and I'm not going to pretend the weight didn't reach me. The road behind, a villain's script burned page by page, every son of luck folded into my footnotes. The road ahead, a burial sea full of emperors to be, a golden age with my name pre-carved into its arguments, and above all of it, patient as gardens, 2 women older than history, one looking for her brother in my face, one looking for my origin and finding a locked door. Every ladder I climb, it turns out, has someone at the top already leaning over the rail. Good, honestly. I was starting to worry the road would run out of rungs. The dog wandered over around moonset, sat its warm bulk against my side without being asked. It will deny this to its dying day, and we watched the lanterns together. They kneel, it observed, or they get buried, or they get eaten, and the ones above the sky watch. It's a good arrangement, boy. My last two owners had the same one. What happened to them? I asked. The dog was quiet for a moment, tail moving slow. They became the ones watching, it said. Sleep. You have a banquet to survive. And after that, a pool. And after that, everything else. 3 small scenes closed that season. I only witnessed one of them. The other 2 I'd pay for later, one in trouble, one in something better, and I set them down here in the order the world was quietly arranging them. The first happened somewhere I'll never be able to point to on a map, in the old central Heaven Dao domain, in the burned district of a city called Yunluo. A young man stood in the rain over 2 graves he'd dug himself. One held a maid named Xialan, who had been his whole world and died in a crossfire between giants. The other held the man he used to be, the discard, the trash of his clan, the boy with kind eyes. Neither occupant was coming back. The young man had died once too, and it hadn't taken, and the thing that walked out of his death had eaten the parasite ancestor that caused it all and inherited every secret the old monster ever hoarded. His clan thinks he's dead. The world thinks he's dead. I thought he was dead. I closed his file myself, whistling. Wen Su is not dead. He is out there in the wide world with a nirvana body that treats every grave as a doorway, a head full of stolen ancient knowledge, a grief with my name stitched into it, and a promise he renews every time it rains. He doesn't know I never wanted his bead, that his tragedy was his own ancestor wearing his hands. He knows a version where I'm the monster. And the terrible, honest truth? In his story, he's right. In his story, I'm the son of luck, the untouchable golden man who took everything in an afternoon. The world sponsors protagonists. I should know. I've buried 4. Somewhere out there, the 5th one is sponsoring himself, and when that bill arrives, it won't announce itself with a speech. The second scene, the dog swears by its pedigree, happened somewhere on the far web of the Emperor Road, where a girl on her 8th life sailed alone toward the burial sea with a supreme jar for a lantern. Somewhere in the crossing, the cycle brushed her again. Small this time, a toll, a tithe of memories, and she sat down in the middle of her deck and inventoried herself, the way she's done 100 times across 8 lives, cataloging what the wipe had taken. Then she said a name out loud, checked it against her chest, found it still there. Lin Yuan, she told the empty sea, in the tone of a woman confirming the one fixed star in a sky that keeps being rewritten. Still there. Good. And she sailed on. Free. A word she's still trying on. Arrow turned archer, carrying my name like contraband past the customs of her own forgetting. We'll meet at the burial sea. That's not a promise. Promises are for things that might not happen. That's navigation. The third scene was mine, and it was small, and it was everything. Morning on Luoxia Peak, 6 weeks before the banquet. Dragon horses saddled, my uncle's welcome gift, beasts that break the void at a canter, and my whole strange household mounted up for the first unhurried ride of our entire acquaintance. No road ahead, no station, no schedule of monsters, just 300,000 li of homeland we'd crossed a universe to claim, gold in the morning mist, and the people I'd bound to me with gifts and been bound to by everything else. Ryu raced Lin Yu through the cloud valleys, shrieking, Judge jogging behind with its coffin like long-suffering luggage. Li Yue rode like calligraphy. Changge rode like a rumor of winter. Manhwa rode beside me and didn't say anything, and didn't need to, because we'd both been keeping the same ledger all year, and both knew, to the entry, what it said. I did the accounting slowly, because I'd earned the slowness. 2 years ago, I woke up holding a knife over a sleeping girl, with a script in my head that ended with everyone I now love dead by my hand, and my name a curse in the mouths of heroes. Now, the girl with the supreme bone has 2 of them and rides on my right. The script's heroes are footnotes. The knife stayed in its sheath, and the hand that held it has given away more treasure than most dynasties ever loot, and every gift came back multiplied, in weapons, in herbs, in organs of banned divinity, in a bell with a daughter in it, in a dog with an empire's memory and a chicken habit, in a family 200,000 years wide that fed an immortality herb to its scariest grandpa on the strength of my word. The villain of this novel is the most beloved man on his mountain. Somewhere, the original author has achieved rotational velocities that could power the Emperor Road's lighting grid. The heavens gave me a billion-fold return on kindness, and I have abused it past every warranty, and I am nowhere near done. Because here's the final accounting, the one I did on that ride with the wind full of home. Ahead, 6 weeks out, a banquet, with a Wang family heir arriving to measure my family for his ambitions, in the venue where my aunt now outranks his mother's whole delegation. Beyond it, a 1,000-year pool in a holy land, whose sovereign wants to bind me to her sect, for reasons she thinks are secret. Beyond that, the burial sea, an ancestor in his second youth saving me a seat, a golden retriever cousin building a legend to spend on me, a fish under a river of blood holding a secret it licked out of a Buddha, a girl who, navigates by my name, and every emperor-to-be of a golden age, including 2 reincarnated sovereigns on this very planet who don't yet know my face, and above all of it, leaning on the topmost rail of existence, a masked monarch searching my features for her lost brother, and a willow older than the sky, waiting, her words, for my return in ascension. I thought about the version of me that never put the knife down, the one the author wrote, the one who carved out his cousin's bone and started the long slide to a cautionary death. I could feel him in my memories like a coat I'd tried on and returned. He'd have been so strong, so fast, so alone. He'd have won every early fight and lost the only thing worth keeping, which is the 4 women riding through the mist and the dog asleep in florals and the family that fed a god pill to its scariest grandfather because I asked. I don't envy that man his 800 chapters. I've got a mountain and a manifest and a promise to keep. I'll take it. The old script gave me 800 chapters and a cautionary death. I gave it back a bell that outrings heaven and a family that doesn't kneel and a road that tells my story in verses at every station. At the end of the immortal path, who stands at the peak? Patience. I'm on my way up, and I'm bringing everyone.